I'm Victoria, 29 years old, a product designer with my own successful business. Matthew and I have been married for 5 years. My career is going great, and I'm financially stable enough to own our apartment. Throughout our relationship, my husband felt insecure because I earned more than him. Instead of being happy for me, he saw it as a competition, acting immaturely and choosing rivalry over support. I had hoped for his understanding during this tough time, but instead, our new home felt like a battleground of emotions. My father used to tell me not to worry about him and to focus on my marriage, but I believed it was important to spend time with him while we could. As time went on, I found it hard to hide my frustration with my husband. In the beginning, our love was strong, and we were happy together. But his insensitive remarks about my father's illness changed everything. It was difficult to accept this new side of him. My husband and I both worked from home, but he thought having me around was distracting, so I rented an office space and started commuting. It was convenient because it was on my way to the hospital where my father was being treated. Meanwhile, my husband stayed home all day and left all the chores to me. Juggling work, taking care of my father, and managing the house wore me out. Every day, I came home to find a mess and dirty dishes left by my husband. He seemed oblivious to my exhaustion and lived selfishly. Living with him made me realize he lacked empathy, leaving me feeling terribly alone. Then my father passed away. We had sold our family home as we had discussed with him. Despite being busy with funeral arrangements, my husband seemed distant, often on his phone or disappearing altogether. "Matthew, please help me, especially now," I begged, but he just got another work call. After hanging up, he laughed about all the calls he was getting. My anger and disappointment towards him grew deeper, especially with the sudden loss of my father. He became even colder, and I felt overwhelmingly sad. On the day of the funeral, he spent a long time talking to his parents away from everyone else. When they returned, they were smirking, which made me feel more isolated as others noticed their behavior. Despite everything, the cremation, burial, and inheritance processes went smoothly and the funeral ended well. After my father's death, my husband casually suggested, "Let's move in with my parents starting today. They're my parents, so it should be fine, right? If you don't agree, maybe we should think about divorce," he said with a laugh. But I couldn't stay calm after such an unreasonable proposal, especially while grieving. "How can we live there? We don't have any extra rooms in this apartment, do we?" I questioned. Actually, one room in our apartment served as an office and storage for my husband's work stuff. Since we didn't have kids, he used it freely. "We have that villa you inherited," he replied, smiling. I was shocked. Even though we had sold our family home, the villa held special memories for both my father and me. It was a place I wanted to keep as a tribute to him. But my husband didn't seem to care about my feelings and kept pushing for his own way. Living in that villa would be really tough for me, I tried to explain, but he didn't seem to listen. His parents had already ended their lease and decided to move into the villa. It seemed they had planned this during my father's funeral. Attracted by its space and peaceful location, their move was already in progress, and I felt like any objections I had would be pointless. Every time I tried to talk about my feelings, my husband would get annoyed. "You're always thinking about yourself. You've been away from home so much because of your father's illness and those sudden emergencies. Do you realize how much I've had to put up with because of your obsession with your father?" His words were harsh and unsympathetic, making my world even darker. "Now that your father has passed, you should listen to me," he went on. "It took him a whole year to die, which was way too long." His cold, heartless comments left me reeling. I didn't want to believe that this was who my husband truly was, but it was becoming painfully clear. He had little regard for my father or me. I remembered the pain on my father's face as he lay in the hospital bed. He would never have wanted me to abandon his memory just to obey my husband's insensitive demands. My husband's lack of empathy was crushing, and I felt more and more alone in my grief and in my battle to honor my father's legacy. In that moment, any love I had for my husband vanished. My heart ached as I considered his apparent excitement about gaining the villa while I was supposed to be grieving for my father. Despite the storm of emotions inside me, I kept my composure and cautioned him, "You may think living in the villa is a good idea now, but you might regret it later." He seemed determined, so reluctantly, I agreed to his plan. Taking only a few essentials, I left our home. My husband looked puzzled by my sparse belongings, but I simply told him, "I'll get the rest later." Honestly, I had no desire to say another word to him. It hurt to face my in-laws, who seemed to have eagerly awaited my father's death and were now moving into the villa with enthusiasm. I followed my husband in silence. The one thing I couldn't bear was the thought of my beloved place being subject to his whims. The villa, a single-family home near the sea, sat in an average neighborhood but was still conveniently close to the city center. Its land held great value. Stepping out of the station, memories of my childhood flooded back. My mother was alive then, and I remembered my father carrying me home on his back after I fell asleep on the train. Arriving at the villa, I found my in-laws already inside. Suspicion crept in. It seemed my husband had secretly given them a key without telling me. This realization made me even more uneasy. The fact that my in-laws had planned their move without consulting anyone only added to my distrust. As I looked around, as I watched my in-laws, I could see the excitement in their eyes as they imagined their new life in our family home, the villa. It was filled with sturdy furniture carefully chosen by my father, with eclectic European-style furnishings likely picked out by my mother, each piece holding sentimental value. Yet, they seemed oblivious to the true beauty of the villa. Isn't it perfect? Goodbye cramped apartment living. We're blessed to call this place home now, they exclaimed. The view from the second floor was truly breathtaking. It reminded me of my father's quiet pride in this special place, a stark contrast to my in-laws' insensitive excitement. Amid their excitement over what they dubbed the marvelous House of Secrets, my husband and his parents' enthusiastic comments only grated on my nerves. It seemed they were completely ignoring the emotional weight of my father's passing, treating the villa as nothing more than a fortunate inheritance. The location and the house are both flawless. We're lucky your father left us this magnificent villa. We owe him our thanks, my husband remarked thoughtlessly, sharing laughs with his parents as they cracked open beers to celebrate their new living situation. As I prepared snacks for them, cherished memories of moments spent with my parents around the dining table felt overshadowed and tainted by the current atmosphere. I chose to bury my emotions and soldier through the night. The next morning, the mood was abruptly shattered by my mother-in-law's piercing scream echoing through the villa. As I hurried to see what had happened, I found her on the bathroom floor, gripping her foot with a panicked expression. "The floor just gave way under me," she gasped, still shaken from the shock. My husband and father-in-law looked puzzled. "The floor seems fine. You probably just slipped," they suggested casually, brushing off her concerns. They examined the area she pointed to, but the floorboards appeared smooth and perfectly aligned. However, she insisted, "I'm certain the floor collapsed." As they continued their cursory inspection, I intervened. "Have you tried stepping on that slightly different colored part of the floor?" I asked, surprised. They all focused on the spot I indicated. Stepping forward, I pressed down on the discolored section with my slippered foot, and immediately the floorboard made a distinct sound and slightly sank. But the moment I lifted my foot, it snapped back into place. "What was that?" they exclaimed simultaneously. If someone stepped on it without knowing, they'd think the floor had collapsed. "Look, the floor sinks a bit." "It's like a trap," I clarified. "That's dangerous. Is there something wrong with this house?" They reacted, suddenly concerned. Their previous disregard for the sentimental value of the villa to me seemed momentarily forgotten as they faced the unexpected reality of its physical quirks. I calmly explained the situation, and they all looked at me with surprise and skepticism. "It's not a flaw," I assured them. "My father deliberately installed these features. This house is what you might call a mechanical mansion or a trick house." "Why would he do that?" they asked, perplexed. "Well, my father was a huge fan of ninjas. He invested a lot of time and money in this villa, which was not only his pride and joy, but also a showcase of his creativity," I explained. "As a child, I often came here while he worked on the house's mechanisms or added new ones. That's why the villa is full of traps and clever contraptions, like a shelf you shouldn't touch, a floorboard that drops when stepped on, a door that only opens in a specific sequence, hidden doors, and even secret rooms. This house is a reflection of my father's dreams and his inventive spirit developed over many years. Of course, this place is familiar to me, having visited since childhood and learned from my father how to navigate all these traps. I have no trouble with them. But it's a different story for my husband and in-laws who are unfamiliar with it. I warned you that living in this villa would be challenging. I also mentioned it's a place filled with my father's memories. My father's fascination with ninja gadgets was widely known among our relatives. What surprised me was that my husband and his parents had been oblivious to it. At first, my husband claimed he hadn't heard about it, but now he was speechless. My in-laws were equally taken aback by this revelation. With our apartment lease already canceled and nowhere else to go, they looked to my husband for guidance. Amid their confusion, both my father-in-law and husband accidentally triggered another trap, causing them to tumble. Seeing them sprawled on the ground, I couldn't help but chuckle. "Feel free to stay as long as you like," I said, my tone more sarcastic than sincere. They had been enchanted by the villa's luxury, ignoring my warnings and showing no interest in my father's hobbies. Now their oversight was catching up with them. Even my explanations about the trap dangers seemed to go unheard. "This won't be a problem. We'll adjust," my husband replied, trying to sound confident. I smiled knowingly, understanding his attempt but also aware of the challenges they would face in a house filled with my father's intricate contraptions. I informed them that I would return to the apartment to prepare for our move. However, my real intention was to stay behind. I needed some time alone to go through my father's belongings, finding comfort in the quiet. It gave me the space to gradually regain a sense of optimism and start envisioning my future. In just 2 days, my husband and in-laws had had enough of life in the villa. Meanwhile, my father's villa had become a minor attraction in the neighborhood. It was regularly featured in local newsletters as the trick mansion nestled in the residential area. Whenever the villa was occupied, curious locals and visitors, drawn by its reputation, would come to see the famous house. I remembered times when strangers toured the villa and local children played around it, bringing energy and liveliness to the place. My father had listed both the villa's and our former home's phone numbers in the newsletters. But now that the family home's number was inactive, any inquiries would be redirected to the villa's number. Thanks to my upbringing, I was fluent in foreign languages, which made it easy for me to handle calls from international visitors. However, my husband and in-laws struggled with this. They couldn't understand foreign languages and were already overwhelmed by the challenging lifestyle of navigating the house's many traps. Exhausted, sleep-deprived, and overwhelmed by the constant stream of unexpected visitors and challenging phone calls, they stumbled back to the apartment. "Why don't we all just live in this apartment together? Consider it," they suggested, desperate to escape the villa. They had eagerly anticipated inheriting the villa after my father's passing. But ironically, they couldn't handle living there for even 2 days. Instead of offering them tea, I handed my husband the divorce papers already filled out and stamped. "There's no way we can live together. If you understand, please leave quickly," I explained with a heavy sigh. I couldn't forgive him for his insensitivity and the way he had dismissed my feelings without discussion or explanation. He had unilaterally decided we would live with his parents. He had never shared household responsibilities with me before and had comfortably left them all to me. During our time at the villa, I felt trapped and overwhelmed, yet he seemed completely indifferent to my struggles. Facing my husband and his parents in our apartment, I realized I couldn't continue living with someone so self-centered. His actions had spoken louder than any promises he could make. "What's going on? You used to love me, right?" he asked, puzzled by my cold demeanor. I couldn't help but scoff at his naive question. How can I love someone who secretly wished for my father's death and celebrated when he passed? I replied, my voice steady and unwavering. I handed him the divorce papers and firmly instructed all 3 of them to leave the apartment. "First of all, this is my apartment. If anyone should leave, it's you," I asserted. When my husband raised his voice, disregarding the disturbance it caused our neighbors, I reminded him calmly, "Victoria, I'll call the police for trespassing if you don't leave quietly. Remember, this apartment is in my name." They fell silent, realizing the seriousness of the situation. They had relied on me for financial support, and now, with little of their own, they faced a harsh reality. Determined to cut ties before they could start their lengthy persuasions, I watched them leave. Neither my husband nor my in-laws had much in savings. After being kicked out of the apartment and unable to return to the villa, they ended up in a cheap, low-quality apartment, struggling to get by. The old apartment was so much better, they often complained. Initially, my husband felt guilty and apologized repeatedly. However, as time passed, his guilt turned into resentment towards his parents. Because of their age, they didn't work much, and their attempts were short-lived. Eventually, they used up all their savings and pension. The constant arguments drove a wedge between them as a family. The thin walls of their new apartment barely contained their daily disagreements. Even when they received noise complaints, they refused to apologize. Instead, they responded with hostility, making themselves unpopular with the neighbors. It seemed inevitable, but they would have to find another place to live soon. My husband, who had once enjoyed the convenience of working from home, now found himself in a cramped space with no proper workspace. This severely impacted his ability to focus, and as a result, his reputation and sales suffered. He struggled to make ends meet with a late-night job at a convenience store and was considering taking on multiple part-time jobs just to get by. In moments of clarity, my in-laws realized that letting their son make decisions for them had been their biggest mistake. During their frequent arguments, they blamed the villa's traps and each other. "If you had been more responsible, we wouldn't be in this mess," they would argue, pointing fingers but never acknowledging their own roles in their downfall. After the divorce, my career as a product designer took a significant leap forward. To cope with the grief of my father's passing and the chaos that ensued, I poured my creativity into designing with a unique twist, incorporating ninja-inspired elements inspired by my father's interests. I shared these designs on social media, where they quickly gained popularity. To my surprise, a major cosmetics company reached out, intrigued by my designs. They wanted me to create packaging with an Asian flair, incorporating ninja themes. Embracing the project, I saw it as a way to honor my father's memory. It turned out to be a huge success, propelling my career to new heights. I found solace in sharing updates at my parents' graves, telling them about my achievements and how their legacy continued to inspire my work. I decided to keep the villa, transforming it into a unique mechanical house filled with memories of my father. I organized tours and made slight adjustments to ensure it was safe for visitors, allowing locals and tourists to explore and enjoy it for free. Before long, the house garnered significant media attention. The income from this exposure was invaluable, helping to cover its maintenance costs. Moreover, articles about the house were translated into different languages, garnering support from international fans, including elderly enthusiasts who shared my father's passion for ninjas. I devoted myself to maintaining this enchanting place. The mechanical house buzzed with activity, especially popular among local children. "Is this the famous mechanical house? Where are the tricks? Show us," they'd eagerly inquire. With the help of local volunteers, we ensured everyone could play safely. Foreign tourists, in particular, were captivated by features like the hidden floorboard and secret doors. While losing my father and the upheaval of inheriting the villa led to my divorce, the gains have outweighed the losses. The villa has evolved into a treasure trove of memories that I now share with loved ones and visitors alike. It has also sparked a personal transformation, propelling me forward with renewed optimism and hope.
I'm Emma. I landed my first real job as an accountant at D&M Construction right out of college. My desk was buried in the back corner of the office, a tiny space crammed with piles of invoices and contract agreements. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. It was during one of those late evenings when I first met Michael. I was wrestling with an especially stubborn printer that decided to jam when he walked by. He was the new head of the project department, and he had that sort of aura that turned heads, a confident stride and a sharp suit. "Need a hand?" he asked, noticing my battle with the paper tray. I looked up, slightly embarrassed. "Yeah, this thing hates me." Michael chuckled and stepped closer, his hands skillfully navigating the guts of the printer. "These machines have a mind of their own." "Thanks," I sighed as he pulled out a crumpled sheet of paper. "I'm Emma, by the way." "Michael, I've seen you around. You're the one making all the numbers work, right?" He flashed a grin that made me forget about the printer for a moment. We continued to see more of each other, and our casual meetings started to feel like the best parts of my day. Michael was easy to be around, charming, yes, but also genuinely interested in what I had to say. One Friday, as we were leaving the office together, Michael stopped me by the elevator. "Emma, would you like to go out tomorrow? Maybe see a movie or grab some dinner?" A few months into our dating, Michael decided it was time I met his parents. He still lived with them in a small, cozy apartment cluttered with family photos and keepsakes. The anticipation of meeting them was nerve-wracking, not just because they were his parents, but also because I knew they held traditional views about success and roles within a family. As we stepped into the apartment, the smell of homemade food welcomed us. Michael introduced me with a proud smile. "Mom, Dad, this is Emma, the woman I told you about." His mother, Linda, scrutinized me from head to toe, then offered a stiff smile as she shook my hand. "So, Emma, where do you work?" she asked, her voice laced with curiosity, but somehow sharp. "I'm an accountant at D&M Construction," I replied, trying to sound confident. "An accountant, huh?" His father, George, chimed in, leaning back in his chair. "Well, our Michael is the head of new projects." "Quite a significant role, right, Michael?" Michael nodded. "Yeah, Dad, but Emma's job is crucial too. She handles a lot of the company's finances." Linda and George exchanged looks, their expressions unreadable. "Yes, but you're the one with the career that's going places," Linda said, turning her gaze back to me. "An accountant is nice, dear, but Michael is making real strides in the company." The air thickened with that statement, and I forced a smile, feeling my stomach twist. It was clear they saw a hierarchy where their son stood on top, and I was just there. The dinner progressed with small talk and an undercurrent of judgment. I could tell they were assessing my every word, my every move, to see if I measured up to their expectations for their son. Not long after that uncomfortable dinner, Michael popped the question in our favorite park. It was surreal. There he was, down on one knee, with the most earnest look in his eyes. My joy was palpable. "Yes, Michael, yes." As we started planning our life together, the bubble of our engagement was pricked by the reality of his parents' influence. One evening, while Michael was helping his mom with dishes after another dinner at their place, Linda pulled me aside. "Emma, dear," she began, her voice low and serious, "Michael has a promising future. And with such a future, we just think it's wise to organize things properly." "What do you mean, organize?" "A prenuptial agreement, dear. It's just practical," she explained, her tone implying that it was a foregone conclusion. The word hit me like a ton of bricks. "Prenup? Are you suggesting I might go after Michael's money?" "It's not personal, dear. It's precautionary," she answered, her voice soft but firm. When Michael and I were finally alone in the car, I couldn't keep it in anymore. "Michael, your mom wants us to sign a prenup." He didn't seem surprised. "Yeah, she mentioned it to me too. It's just a safety net." He tried to reassure me, reaching out for my hand. I pulled away, feeling betrayed. "Feels more like a trap, Michael." He looked hurt. "It's not a trap. It's just how my family handles things. They want to protect what we're building." The rest of the ride was silent, each of us lost in our thoughts. At home, Michael brought out the prenup papers. They lay on our kitchen table, like an uninvited guest. "Look, Emma, it's straightforward. We'll both be protected," he said, attempting to bridge the gap between us. I leafed through the document, each clause tightening the knot in my stomach. "This doesn't protect us, Michael. It protects you from me." "We can change anything you're not comfortable with," he offered, but his voice lacked conviction. We spent the next few hours going over every line, negotiating terms that felt less like a betrayal. It was tough, arguing over hypotheticals that felt like they could tear us apart. But by the end of the night, we forged something that looked less like his parents' will and more like a mutual agreement. Adjusting to married life in our little rented apartment came with its own set of joys and challenges. At first, everything felt new and exciting, even the mundane tasks of setting up home and figuring out who does what. Michael and I fell into a comfortable routine, filled with small celebrations of our new life together. At work, I kept on with my accounting duties, just another face among many in a large company. But things started to shift when, a year into our marriage, my boss, Mr. Thompson, called me into his office. He was a man of few words, and even fewer smiles. "Emma, you've been pulling some impressive numbers. I see potential in you," he said, his voice gruff, but not unkind. I was taken aback, unsure of what this meant. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I appreciate your confidence in me." It's not just confidence, he continued, shuffling papers on his desk as if looking for evidence of my hard work. It's fact. I'm promoting you to chief accountant. The promotion came as a shock, but it was a welcome one. I couldn't wait to share the news with Michael, thinking he'd be thrilled. When I told him over dinner, his reaction was mixed, a smile, yes, but there was a hesitation in his eyes. That's great, babe. Really? Chief accountant, huh? He said, trying to keep his voice upbeat. Yeah, can you believe it? I replied, excitement bubbling in my chest. Sure. It's just, you'll be making more now, right? A lot more than me, he added, his tone shifting slightly. I reached across the table, squeezing his hand. Hey, this is good for us, for our future. It's our success, not just mine. Michael nodded, but his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Yeah, of course. Just don't go bragging to my folks, okay? They still think I'm the high flyer in the family. I agreed, not wanting to cause any family tensions. Your secret's safe with me, I assured him with a light laugh, trying to keep the atmosphere easy. But as the months rolled by and my responsibilities increased, so did the gap between Michael's perception of our careers and the reality. Another year passed, and another promotion landed on my lap, this time to financial director. The gap in our incomes widened, and Michael's jokes about my rich wife became more frequent, each one stinging a bit more than the last. One evening, I overheard Michael on the phone with his mother. No, Emma's just the same, still crunching numbers. Yeah, she likes it well enough. I stood frozen outside the room, the words hitting harder than expected. He hadn't told them about either of my promotions. I confronted him about it later that night. Why haven't you told your parents about my job? About how well I'm doing? I asked, feeling both hurt and angry. Michael sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Look, Emma, it's complicated. Dad, he's got these old-fashioned ideas about success and who provides in the family. I knew he was right about his parents, but it didn't make the deception easier to swallow. We're supposed to be a team, Michael. It feels like you're ashamed of what I've achieved. The conversation lingered in the air, unresolved. We were a team, but at that moment, it felt like we were playing on different fields. I knew I had to be understanding, but part of me also needed Michael to step up and own our reality, not just the one his parents wanted to see. Living with Michael had its ups and downs, but what really started to wear on me was the financial strain caused by his parents' constant demands for money. Before we got married, Michael lived with them and took care of all their expenses. Now that we were on our own, I had hoped that would change, but old habits die hard. One evening, as I was sorting through our monthly bills, I noticed that the numbers just weren't adding up. We seemed to be bleeding money faster than I could account for. Michael, we need to talk about our finances, I said as he walked in from work, looking tired. What's up? He asked, dropping his bag by the door and sinking into the couch with a sigh. It's about the money going out every month. I'm paying all the bills and the rent, and it's starting to add up. Aren't you contributing to any of these? I asked, trying to keep my tone even but feeling my frustration bubble. Michael rubbed his temples and sighed. Look, I've been helping my folks out a lot lately. They've had some extra expenses, and, well, I can't just leave them hanging. But that's all your money going to them. What about us? Our future? I pressed, needing him to see the full picture. I know. It's just temporary. Things will stabilize, he reassured me, but his voice lacked conviction. This temporary seems to be stretching indefinitely, Michael. Your mom even tells people that you're the one supporting me, and that's far from the truth, I countered, feeling the sting of each word. Michael looked away, the weight of the situation sinking in. I'm sorry, Emma. I owe them a lot. They raised me, and it feels wrong to turn them away when they need help. But at what cost? We can't even plan for anything because we don't know how much of your paycheck will go to your parents each month, I argued, my worry growing as I thought about our future. He didn't have an answer, just sat there looking as lost as I felt. The conversation was going nowhere, and it left a sour taste in my mouth. The next time we visited his parents, the tension was palpable. His mother, Linda, made a point of mentioning how Michael had been their rock, hinting at how much he'd been helping them out. "We don't know what we'd do without Michael. He's been such a support, not just emotionally but financially too," she said, glancing my way with a sharp smile. As days turned into weeks with no change, I began to wonder if we'd ever find our way out of this mess, or if the weight of his obligations to his parents would always overshadow our plans and dreams. As time marched on, the idea of buying our own place started to seem more like a necessity than a luxury. I broached the subject with Michael one night while we were cleaning up after dinner. "Michael, I've been thinking," I started, wiping down the counter. "Maybe it's time we looked into buying a house. Renting is just throwing money away every month." Michael paused, drying a plate slowly. "A house, huh? Yeah, that sounds great, but do we have enough for a down payment?" "I've been saving up on the side. I think we might just have enough to get us through the door, if we tighten our belts a bit more," I replied, hopeful. He put the plate down and leaned against the counter. "That's incredible, Em. I didn't know you had that much set aside." "Well, I wanted it to be a surprise. But here's the thing," I continued, bracing myself for his reaction. "The down payment will mostly be from my savings. I mean, I want this to be our home, equally ours, but on paper, it'll look a bit lopsided." Michael's face fell slightly, and he nodded. "I get it. Your money, your rules. I just wish I could chip in more." "It's not about rules, Michael. It's our home. But legally, I think it would make sense to have the house under my name, just for now," I explained, trying to keep the conversation light but firm. Michael sighed, scratching his head. "Yeah, I guess that makes sense. As long as we're together in this, that's what counts, right?" "Exactly, we're in this together," I reassured him, reaching out to squeeze his hand. We started house hunting that weekend, and it didn't take long before we found a small, charming place that felt just right. Once the house was officially ours, I took on the mortgage payments, and we moved in. It felt like a fresh start, a real part of our future taking shape. But old habits and secrets don't just stay behind, especially not Michael's tendency to shield his parents from our reality. One evening, I overheard Michael on the phone in our new study. "No, Mom, the house is great. Yeah, Emma's really done well for herself. I'm keeping up, don't worry," he said, his voice low. When he came out, I confronted him. "Why do you keep doing that? Making it sound like I'm the one pulling all the weight." Michael flinched, then exhaled deeply. "I didn't mean anything by it, Emma. It's just easier this way. They think I'm doing well, too. Let's just enjoy our new home, okay? We'll deal with my parents later." I nodded, reluctantly letting the issue go, but it gnawed at me. Our home was supposed to be our sanctuary, not another stage for half-truths and tiptoeing around delicate egos. Life at home was tense after Michael's latest career hiccup. He was always on edge, trying to secure a promotion by hustling harder at work, making deals left and right. He seemed more desperate to prove himself, especially to his parents. One evening, while Michael was late again, caught up in meetings, I stumbled upon some documents sprawled across our home office desk. The top sheet caught my eye, a contract proposal with a company I recognized as recently declared bankrupt. Alarm bells rang in my head. Signing with a bankrupt company could jeopardize not only Michael's position but could also drag our company through the mud. When Michael finally came home, I confronted him. "Michael, what's this about signing with a company that's bankrupt? Do you realize the risks involved?" He brushed me off with a wave of his hand, his eyes glued to his phone. "I know what I'm doing, Emma. This deal could be a big break for me. But it's a reckless move. It could backfire on you, and on both of us. Please, think this through," I pleaded, hoping to get through to him. Michael scoffed. "Look, Emma, I get that you're trying to help, but I know how to handle my job. These are the risks we have to take in the business world. A few weeks later, my worst fears came true. Michael came home, paler than usual, slumping into a chair across from me in the kitchen. "I was fired today," he muttered, avoiding my gaze. I was furious and scared, but managed to keep my voice steady. "What are we going to do now? You know we have the mortgage and all our other bills." Michael was quiet, then he looked up with a desperate sort of determination. "Just, don't tell my parents, okay? They can't know about this. It would crush them." So I agreed, more out of shock than anything else, and we pretended nothing had changed when his parents called or visited. But now, with only my income, the financial strain was immense. I handled our expenses alone, feeling the burden of each bill. One day, Michael came to me, hesitant. "Emma, I need to ask you for something. It's about my parents, they need some financial help again. Could we?" I cut him off, unable to hide my frustration. "You want me to give more money to your parents now? When we're barely scraping by with your job gone and me covering everything?" Michael flinched. "It's just that they're really strapped this month, and I promised." "No, Michael. Just no. I'm stretched thin as it is. You need to sort this out. Find a job, any job," I snapped, the stress boiling over. He didn't say anything, just walked away, and we didn't speak for the rest of the week. Losing my mother was one of the hardest things I've ever had to endure. The only silver lining was the small house she left me, a quaint place where I had so many childhood memories. Not long after the funeral, my mother-in-law, Linda, brought up the house. "You know, dear, it might be best if you sold that little house. You could use the money to help us," she suggested during one of their visits. I was stunned by her audacity. "It's my house, Linda, and I'm going to keep it. I've decided to rent it out to help pay off our mortgage," I responded, trying to keep my cool. Linda frowned, clearly not happy with my decision, but she didn't push further at the time. I was too overwhelmed with work and managing our finances to handle the rentals myself, so I asked Michael to find us tenants. A few weeks later, he told me he'd found the perfect tenants, an elderly couple looking for a place just like my mom's house. Trusting him, I thought nothing more of it until a few months later when I realized that no rent had been deposited into my account. Concerned, I decided to visit the house and speak with the tenants directly. When I arrived, the sight before me was like a slap in the face. Michael's parents were lounging in the living room, completely at home. "What the hell is going on here?" I demanded, my voice shaking with rage. Linda looked up, not the least bit ashamed. "Oh, hello, dear. Michael said we could stay here. Isn't it lovely?" I was expecting tenants who would pay rent, Linda. "Not you living here rent-free." I shot back, feeling betrayed. "We're family, dear. We thought you wouldn't mind," she replied, her tone dismissive. I stormed out and called Michael right then and there. "Why are your parents in my mother's house? You told me you rented it out to an elderly couple." "They are an elderly couple, Emma. And they needed a place. You can afford to help out," Michael tried to justify over the phone. "This is not helping, Michael. This is taking advantage. I'm paying our mortgage alone, and now this? Your parents need to leave. Now," I said firmly, my decision absolute. Michael was silent for a moment. "Emma, they have nowhere else to go. They sold their apartment. They thought." "I don't care what they thought. They have until the end of the week to move out." I cut him off, too angry to care about anything else. The conversation ended badly, with Michael pleading and me standing my ground. When I confronted his parents again, telling them they needed to leave, Linda lashed out. "You can't do this to us, Emma. We're family. Where's your heart?" she cried out, her words bitter and cold. "My heart is trying to keep my head above water, Linda. You need to leave," I replied, my voice firm despite the tremor I felt inside. They didn't move willingly. I had to call the police to escort them out after they refused to leave by the deadline. Linda's parting words were venomous, cursing me and calling me heartless. Walking back into my own home after the mess with the police, I was hoping for some peace, maybe a moment to gather my thoughts. But the universe had other plans. As soon as I opened the door, the first thing I heard was the murmurs from the living room, my mother-in-law's voice unmistakably sharp. I dropped my keys on the hall table and walked in to find Linda and George sitting there, coffee in hand, chatting with Michael. Their expressions turned, fixing me with looks that ranged from accusatory to outright hostile. Michael stood up abruptly, his face red with anger. "How could you do that to my parents, Emma? Apologize, now." Linda chimed in, her tone dripping with disdain. "You've shown your true colors today, Emma. You're unworthy of our family. I think you should leave this house, it belongs to our son." And as if to twist the knife a bit deeper, she added, "Remember the prenup. You won't get a thing from us, and Michael will have the house." I stared at them, the absurdity of the situation almost laughable. Michael nodded along with his mother's words, a smug look on his face. "That's right, Emma. You're my wife, you should listen to me, obey me. If you don't, I'll leave you. And good luck without the alimony." I laughed. "You think I want anything from you, Michael? I agree to the divorce. In fact, I welcome it." Michael's face went pale, his confident stance faltering. "I was just, that was just a joke. Come on, Emma." But I was done. Turning to his parents, I laid it all out. Michael has been unemployed for over a year now. He lives off my earnings, in my house. I made the down payment, I pay the mortgage. Legally and otherwise, this house is mine. The color drained from Linda's face as she turned to Michael, who could only lower his head in shame, muttering, "It's true. I want all of you out of my house. Now. And don't come back," I said, my voice steady but my whole body shaking with the intensity of the moment. They were indignant, of course. Linda started to argue, but I was firm. "Leave now, or I call the police again." I heard Linda demanding Michael pay for a hotel, his quiet, defeated voice responding, "I don't have any money, Mom." Once they were gone, the weight of the confrontation hit me. I turned to Michael, who still seemed stunned by how things had turned out. "You should leave too, Michael. I'll send your things." That night, he left, and the silence of the house was both eerie and soothing. The divorce proceedings were straightforward. Michael didn't contest anything, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps out of resignation, perhaps out of the lack of money for a good lawyer. Now, living alone, I've regained a sense of peace and control. I rent out my mother's house, which helps cover the mortgage, and every decision, from the groceries I buy to the color I paint the walls, is mine alone. At night, I sit in the living room, the same room that once hosted so many painful confrontations, and I feel a deep sense of relief. I'm free. Free from the deceit, free from the control, and most importantly, free to build my life the way I see fit. My name is Anna, and this is the story of how I came to be the person I am today. I guess it all started with the family I was born into. My dad, Michael, was a mechanic with big dreams for his car repair shops, and my mom, Sarah, well, she was mostly just along for the ride. From the day I was born, it was pretty clear that my dad wanted a boy. I remember hearing stories from my Aunt Emily about how Dad's face fell when he first held me. Not exactly the warm welcome you'd expect for a newborn. I wanted a son, Sarah. You know that, I overheard him grumbling one evening. My mom, always trying to smooth things over, would just nod and try to change the subject. But she's healthy, Michael, isn't that what matters, she'd say. When I was 5, my little brother Lucas was born. That was the day I saw my dad smile, a smile that reached his eyes, a rarity in those days. He was over the moon, passing out cigars to anyone who would take one. Finally, a real heir to carry on the business, he boasted to his friends at the shop. Life at home shifted dramatically with Lucas's arrival. All of a sudden, it was like I became invisible. My dad spent his days off teaching Lucas about tools and engines, even before the kid could walk properly. Meanwhile, I was pretty much left to my own devices. If it weren't for my grandparents and Aunt Emily, I don't know how I would have coped. They lived just a few houses down, and I was at their place more than I was at my own. Aunt Emily was another lifesaver. She didn't have kids of her own and seemed to get that life at my house wasn't exactly peachy. We'd spend afternoons at the park, and she'd listen to me ramble about school or whatever book I was reading. "You know, kiddo, you're smarter than you think," she'd tell me as we walked home from the park. "Don't let anyone, not even your dad, make you feel like you're second best." I clung to those words, especially on days when the difference in how my parents treated Lucas and me was blindingly obvious. Like that one time when my dad came home with a brand new bike for Lucas. I remember standing there, hoping maybe there was one for me too. "Why would you need a bike, Anna? It's not like you go out much," Dad said with a shrug when he saw me eyeing the bike. I ran out of the house, tears stinging my eyes, straight to my grandma's. She was in her garden, as usual, and without a word, she opened her arms wide, and I buried my face in her apron. "Let them talk, Anna. You're going to outshine them all one day, you'll see," she whispered as she stroked my hair. One chilly morning in October, right after my 10th birthday, my grandparents decided to surprise me with something special, a cell phone. It wasn't anything fancy, just one of those basic models that could make calls and send texts, but to me, it might as well have been a diamond. We were in their cozy kitchen, the smell of freshly baked cinnamon rolls still lingering in the air. Grandma handed me a small, wrapped box with a mischievous twinkle in her eye. "Go on then, Anna, open it up. It's high time you had one of these." As I tore off the wrapping paper and saw what it was, my eyes must have been as big as saucers. "Really? For me?" I squeaked, hardly believing it. "Of course, for you," Grandpa chuckled, his voice booming warmly. "Every young lady needs to stay connected these days." I spent the next few hours fiddling with the phone, setting it up with Grandma's help, and saving their numbers as my first contacts. But my excitement was short-lived. The next day, I made the mistake of taking my new phone home. I was in the living room, showing it off to Aunt Emily, who had dropped by, when Dad walked in from work. "What's that you've got there?" His tone was more curious than kind, his eyebrows knitting together as he peered at the phone in my hands. "It's my new phone. Grandma and Grandpa gave it to me," I said, a bit too eagerly. Dad's face hardened in an instant, and he reached out, snatching the phone from my grasp. "This is too much for a kid your age. Lucas needs this more than you do." "But," I started to protest, but Aunt Emily put a hand on my shoulder, giving it a gentle squeeze, a silent signal not to argue. Lucas, who had been playing with his toy cars on the floor, looked up, clueless but interested in the sudden tension. Dad wasted no time, he shoved the phone into Lucas's hands. "Here, son, you can have this. Learn to take good care of it." I felt a surge of anger and injustice boiling inside me, but before I could say another word, Aunt Emily steered me out of the room. "Let's go for a walk, Anna. Cool down a bit, huh?" Outside, Aunt Emily let out a long sigh. "Your dad can be a real jerk sometimes, you know? But we've got your back." "I don't get it, Emily. Why does he always do this? Why am I always the one who has to give up everything?" My voice cracked, the hurt too raw to hide. Aunt Emily stopped walking and turned to face me, her expression serious. "Listen, kid, life's not fair, especially not in your house. But remember, you're not alone. Let me talk to your grandparents. We'll sort this out." True to her word, Aunt Emily and my grandparents confronted Dad the following day. They didn't let up, arguing in hushed, tense tones in the dining room while I pretended not to listen from the stairs. Grandpa's voice was firm, a rare sternness to it. "Michael, you had no right to take that phone from Anna. It was our gift to her, not yours to reassign to Lucas." Dad scoffed, dismissive as ever. "Oh, come off it, Dad. It's just a phone. And Lucas is the one who needs it more." "It's not about the phone, Mike. It's about respecting Anna and our choice to give her something," Grandma chimed in, her voice sharp with frustration. In the end, Dad grudgingly handed the phone back to me, his eyes avoiding mine. Here, take it. Just don't expect any more favors. Life has a way of throwing you curveballs, and mine came crashing down the autumn I turned 11. It was a day like any other. I was walking home from school, crunching the fallen leaves under my sneakers, when I noticed something off. The front door was open, and there were more cars parked outside our house than usual. As I walked in, the atmosphere hit me like a brick. My Aunt Emily was there, tears streaming down her face, while my parents stood off to the side, looking more annoyed than concerned. "What's going on?" I asked, dropping my school bag by the door. "Anna, it's your grandparents, there's been an accident," Aunt Emily managed to say through sobs. "A train accident, terrible thing," my dad added flatly, as if he was talking about a delayed delivery at his shop. The news shattered me. My grandparents weren't just family, they were my lifeline, the ones who made sure I felt loved when my own parents couldn't bother. Losing them felt like losing my entire world. The funeral was the hardest day. I remember standing there, the cold wind biting at my cheeks, listening to the murmurs of how tragic it was, how good they were, how unfair life could be. After the funeral, things moved quickly. My dad wasted no time. "Emily, you need to clear out from their house. We're selling it. Need to cash in on the estate and settle things quickly," he said as we sat in the living room, still surrounded by condolence flowers. Aunt Emily, still raw from grief, looked at him like he was a stranger. "Michael, can you hear yourself? Mom and Dad haven't even been gone a week, and you're already talking about money? Life goes on, Emily. We can't sit around and mope. There's a lot at stake," my mom chimed in, her voice cold and detached. That night, Aunt Emily packed up her things and moved into a small apartment just a few blocks from our house. She asked me to help her, probably to give me a break from the oppressive atmosphere at home. As we packed up her belongings, our conversation drifted to what was to come. "Why are they so cold? How can they not care?" I asked, frustration and sadness mingling in my voice. "Some people just show their true colors at times like this, kiddo. But remember, you've got me. No matter what, I'm here," she assured me, pulling me into a hug. The loss of my grandparents was more than just an emotional blow, it changed my entire life setup. Suddenly, I was more of a maid than a daughter at home, cleaning and cooking because my mom decided it was time I learned to pull my weight. Aunt Emily's apartment became my refuge. It wasn't much, just a couple of small rooms, but it was filled with love and understanding, a stark contrast to the increasing coldness at my parents' house. I was still reeling from everything that had happened after losing my grandparents when life decided to throw me yet another curveball. It was a typical Friday afternoon. I had just come home from school, expecting to find the usual empty house until my parents and brother got back. But today, even the emptiness felt different, everything was too quiet, too still. I walked up to the front door and found it locked. My heart started pounding as I realized something was off. I rang the doorbell a few times, waited, but no answer. It wasn't long before Mrs. Jenkins, the nosy neighbor from across the street, came out. "Looking for your family, Anna," she called out from her porch, her voice carrying a mix of concern and curiosity. "Yeah, do you know where they went?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, they packed up some bags and drove off early this morning. Said something about a weekend trip. Didn't they tell you?" Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. "No, they didn't," I managed to say, feeling the sting of tears in my eyes. "How could they just leave me behind like that?" Mrs. Jenkins shook her head, muttering something about some parents before disappearing back into her house. I sat down on the front steps, not sure what to do or feel. The sky started to darken, and as the street lamps flickered on, the reality of my situation sunk in. I was truly alone. Hours must have passed before I finally stood up and made my way to Aunt Emily's apartment. The walk felt longer than usual, each step heavier with the weight of abandonment. When I finally got there and knocked, Aunt Emily opened the door almost immediately, worry etched all over her face. "What's wrong, Anna? What are you doing here so late?" she asked, pulling me inside. Mom and Dad, they went away for the weekend. They locked the house and didn't tell me. I didn't know where else to go. I confessed, my voice breaking as the tears I'd held back started to flow. Aunt Emily's face hardened as she heard this, her usually warm eyes now sparking with anger. They did what? That's it. I'm calling your father. She dialed the number, and after a few tense moments, Dad answered. I could only hear one side of the conversation, but Aunt Emily's tone was enough to tell me it wasn't going well. Yes, Michael, your daughter, my niece, is here with me because you left her behind. She snapped into the phone. No, this isn't just a little mistake. You can't just lock your child out and take off for the weekend. There was a pause as she listened to whatever excuse he was making up on the other end. Well, if that's how you feel, then maybe Anna should just stay with me from now on. Yeah, maybe that's for the best. She hung up before he could respond, her chest heaving with every angry breath. Then, turning to me, her expression softened. You're staying here tonight, Anna. And as long as you need to. We'll figure this out together. Over the next few days, Aunt Emily made arrangements for me to stay with her permanently. My parents didn't object, perhaps out of indifference. Either way, it didn't matter to me anymore. Life with Aunt Emily was a breath of fresh air after everything that had happened. Even though her apartment was small and our budget tighter than ever, it felt like a mansion compared to the emotional prison of my parents' house. One Saturday morning, we sat at the tiny kitchen table, planning our budget with more precision than a military operation. Aunt Emily had always been resourceful, and now she passed on those skills to me. We clipped coupons, planned our meals around grocery sales, and even started a small herb garden on the windowsill to save money on spices. So, we've got $20 left for the month. Think we can splurge on a little ice cream? Aunt Emily asked, her eyes twinkling with mischief. I laughed, shaking my head. Only if it's on sale. Remember, we're the queens of bargains now. That light-hearted moment underscored our new reality. We were in this together, come what may. School became another arena where I had to adjust. At first, I was the girl whose family drama was whispered about in the corridors. But I held my head high, focusing on my studies and finding solace in books and learning. Mrs. Carter, my English teacher, noticed my diligence. One day after class, she called me over. Anna, I've seen you pushing yourself hard this year. Ever thought of joining the debate team? I hesitated, unsure. I don't know, Mrs. Carter. I'm not sure I'd be any good at arguing. She smiled, her gaze kind but firm. It's not just about arguing, Anna. It's about learning to stand up and speak out. Think about it. I did think about it, and with a nudge from Aunt Emily, I joined. Debate turned out to be more than just a club, it was a place where I could hone my voice, a skill I'd need more than I realized. Aunt Emily was my biggest cheerleader. You're going to knock them dead at the competition, she'd say every time I left for a debate meet, her pride evident even though she tried to play it cool. Life wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about thriving, about building something new from the ashes of my old life. Aunt Emily and I became a team, both of us working part-time jobs to keep afloat. She found work at a local library while I took a weekend job at a coffee shop. One evening, as we counted our month's earnings and updated our budget ledger, Aunt Emily put down her pen and looked at me seriously. Anna, I think it's time you think about college. You've got the brains for it. We can make it work, somehow. From that day on, our plans included college. We researched scholarships late into the night, crafted essays, and filled out applications with painstaking care. Each acceptance letter was a victory, every scholarship a triumph, not just for me, but for us both. College was a whirlwind. I hit the books hard, fueled by every memory of being underestimated back home. Living on campus was different from anything I'd experienced, but I adapted quickly, driven by a mix of excitement and the pressure to prove myself. My roommate, Jess, became one of my closest friends. She was studying business, and we'd often sit up late into the night, swapping study tips and planning our futures. You ever think about what you'll do after this, Anna? Jess asked one evening, her book sprawled across our tiny dorm room floor. I'm going all the way, I replied without hesitation. Law school. I want to make a difference, you know? Really change things. I thrived on it, pushing myself to be better every day. The long hours and endless reading were exhausting, but every time I wanted to quit, I'd think of Aunt Emily and her belief in me, and that would be enough to keep me going. During my final year, one of my professors, Professor Carter, called me into his office. He was a stern man, known for his tough grading, but he respected hard work. Anna, your thesis on family law was exceptional. Have you thought about where you might want to work after graduation? He asked, peering at me over his glasses. I've been looking at several firms, sir. I want somewhere I can really get into family law, maybe even start a specialty in it, I said, trying to sound as confident as I felt. Well, I have a recommendation for you. A firm downtown is looking for bright, new talent. I can put in a good word, he offered, his tone suggesting it wasn't an offer he made lightly. Thank you, Professor Carter. I'd appreciate that very much, I replied, a mix of gratitude and excitement swirling in my chest. I landed the job at the firm right after graduation. It was a prestigious place, the kind where you either sank or swam. I chose to swim. Days turned into nights as I worked on case after case, earning a reputation as a meticulous and fierce advocate. It was at a networking event hosted by the firm where I met Michael, a businessman with a keen interest in the intersections of law and commerce. Our first conversation was about a case I was working on, but it quickly turned personal. 2 years later, we got married in a small ceremony. Aunt Emily was there, tears of joy streaming down her face as she watched me say my vows. You did it, Anna. You really did, she whispered as she hugged me tight. With Michael's support, I took the biggest leap of my career. I opened my own law firm. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once, but I was ready for the challenge. We moved to another state where the market was ripe for a new firm, especially one led by a woman with a fresh perspective. Our firm quickly made a name for itself, and as my professional life flourished, so did my personal life. Michael and I welcomed a son, a joyous addition to our family. Life was full, busy, and deeply satisfying. My law firm's success was more than I could have hoped for, and with each successful case, my reputation grew. This caught the attention of local media, and soon, I was invited to speak on TV about domestic violence. The interview went well, sparking discussions across various social platforms. I received an invitation from the governor's office. I was to be recognized for my contributions to child welfare and family law. As I gave my acceptance speech, thanking those who supported me, I saw Aunt Emily wiping away tears. It was a moment of validation for all the hardships we'd endured together. One day, after a particularly long day at the office, I was walking through the parking lot towards my car when I noticed 2 elderly people looking around uncertainly. As I approached, wondering if they needed help, the recognition hit me hard. They were my parents, who had walked out of my life 20 years ago. Can I help you? I asked, my voice cool, masking the surprise and rising unease. Oh, Anna, it's you. We saw you on TV, we knew it was you immediately. We've missed you so much and are so proud of all you've accomplished, my mom said, her voice trembling with emotion. We wanted to reconnect, to be a family again, my dad added, his eyes searching mine for any sign of warmth. I took a moment to gather my thoughts before responding. My family consists of my aunt, my husband, and my son. You chose to leave that family a long time ago. But instead of understanding, they became more insistent. Anna, you're our daughter. We need your help now. Your brother left us, and our business is failing. We have debts, no savings, and we're about to lose our house, my dad explained, his voice desperate. They even hinted at taking legal action if I refused to help, arguing that as their daughter, it was my duty. I couldn't help but laugh, though it was more from disbelief than amusement. Really? You think you can intimidate a lawyer into helping you? You might want to think twice about that, I said sharply. Seeing that their threats were getting them nowhere, they shifted tactics, playing on my emotions. Think about it, Anna. We're your parents. How can you turn us away? I remember very clearly. I replied, my voice steady and firm. How you threw out Aunt Emily and left me behind like I was nothing. Realizing they were getting nowhere, they finally backed down. I handed them some money for their trip back, more out of pity than any sense of duty. This is all I can do for you. Please, don't contact me again. When I got home, I hugged Michael and our son a little tighter. Aunt Emily greeted me with her usual warm smile, and in that moment, I knew I had everything I needed. After meeting my parents, one question lingered in my mind: what had become of Lucas? I utilized my contacts in the police and political circles to track him down. It took weeks of inquiries and waiting, but finally, I got a lead. Lucas had turned his back on our father's dreams of him becoming a mechanic and instead, had embraced his passion for art, living in a distant artist's commune. I hesitated for a moment before calling him. Hello? His voice was cautious, tinged with a curiosity that echoed my own. Lucas, it's Anna. Your sister, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. There was a pause, heavy with years of unsaid words. Anna, wow, this is unexpected. I know it's been a long time. I found out where you were. I hope it's okay that I called. Yeah, of course, he replied, the initial shock giving way to a more relaxed tone. How did you find me? I asked around. I needed to know you were okay, I admitted. The conversation began awkwardly, with each of us tentatively probing the years we'd missed in each other's lives. We agreed to meet at a small cafe halfway between our homes, a neutral ground to rediscover the sibling relationship we'd lost. Sitting across from Lucas a few days later, the initial awkwardness was palpable. So, you're an artist now? I ventured, eager to bridge the gap. Lucas smiled, a genuine, proud smile. Yeah, I am. It's been a tough ride, but I wouldn't change it for anything. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through photos of vibrant paintings, each a burst of color and emotion. I'm hoping to make a real go of it. His work was impressive, and I felt a surge of pride. They're beautiful, Lucas. You've really found your calling. He shrugged modestly. I'm trying. Dad, he never understood. He wanted me in the shop, but that life was never for me. We talked for hours, gradually easing into a comfortable camaraderie, reconnecting not just as siblings, but as adults who had navigated their own trials. I could introduce you to some people in the art world, I offered, eager to help him pave his way to success. Lucas shook his head, a determined glint in his eye. Thanks, Anna, but I need to do this on my own. I want to prove to myself, and maybe a bit to Dad, that I can make it without any handouts. His words echoed my own journey, and I couldn't help but respect his decision. I understand. Just know I'm here, okay? Whatever you need. As we parted ways, Lucas handed me one of his smaller paintings, a beautiful landscape bathed in sunset hues. For you, to remember today. Driving home, I placed the painting on the passenger seat, a smile playing on my lips. Lucas and I were more alike than I'd realized. We were both determined to forge our own destinies, independent yet connected by our shared resilience. Let me set the stage. I'm Elise, 33, translator for a big shot company that keeps me on my toes with languages I barely knew existed until they handed me the dictionary. My life's not your typical fairy tale, it's more a series of plot twists. I married straight out of college, thinking I'd nailed life. But fast forward a few years, the marriage tanked, big surprise, right? But it gave me the best thing ever, my daughter Lily, a spitfire at 8, who has more wit in her pinky than most do in their entire head. Then, there's David, my current flame, or as I like to call him, Mr. Right the second time around. We bumped into each other at a dusty old book club. He was arguing about Hemingway's love of brevity, and I was all in for Fitzgerald's flair. Sparks flew over worn pages and tepid coffee. That was the start of endless debates and coffee dates. A year down the road, David popped the question at the same dingy coffee shop, with a ring as understated as our meeting. Elise, will you? He had started, all nervous, which wasn't his usual confident self. "Make your coffee every morning? Only if you promise to pick up your socks," I quipped, before slipping in a serious, "Yes, I will." But, as luck would have it, not everyone was popping champagne and tossing confetti. Enter Mrs. Thompson, David's mother, a tough nut with a stare that could curdle milk. The first time I met her, she looked me up and down like I was a sofa she regretted buying. "So, you're the one David can't stop yapping about," she had said, her voice sharp as a knife. "Guilty as charged. And you must be the famous Mrs. Thompson. David says you make the best cherry pie in town." From that day on, every visit was a chess game. She'd check my moves, always ready to declare a checkmate. But David was a gem. He'd squeeze my hand under the table, his way of saying, "Ignore her, I'm right here." One day, lounging on our rickety deck while David flipped burgers on the grill, he'd brought it up. "Mom's a bit old school, Elise. She's all about family legacy and that jazz." "Yeah, and she's got it in her head that I'm done having kids. Thinks Lily's it and worries about the precious family line," I'd replied, the frustration bubbling up. David had put down the tongs, his face serious for once. I know. She's worried you won't want more kids. But whatever we decide, it's our business, not hers." Despite the gloom cast by David's mom, our wedding day was everything I'd hoped it would be, modest, but filled with joy. My daughter Lily was dolled up in a cute pink dress, practically floating around the venue, her laughter a melody that softened even the sternest hearts. Everyone we loved was there, smiling and cheering, except for one. Mrs. Thompson sat through the entire event with a face like she'd sucked on a lemon. She didn't even get up to congratulate us. Living with David, it felt like we'd hit the jackpot: warm, cozy evenings, and the constant buzz of a happy, albeit small, family. But as much as our home was filled with love, there was always an undercurrent of tension, thanks to one persistent storm cloud, Mrs. Thompson. One Saturday morning, while David was out running errands, Mrs. Thompson decided it was a good time to drop by unannounced. The doorbell rang just as Lily and I were in the middle of a heated Uno match. "Grams!" Lily shouted, dropping her cards and racing to the door. I followed more slowly, steeling myself. "Mrs. Thompson, what a surprise," I said, my voice polite but cool. She brushed past me without a greeting, her eyes sweeping the room like she was the health inspector and we were a restaurant on the brink of being shut down. "I was just in the neighborhood," she said, though we both knew she lived on the other side of town. "Thought I'd see what you all were up to without David around to supervise." As I headed to the kitchen, I heard her start in on Lily. "So, young lady, has your mother been keeping you busy, or are you just lazing around the house all day?" "We were playing Uno, and I was winning," Lily responded with a confidence I wished I could muster. "That's no real skill, is it? Why don't you read something more stimulating?" I returned with her tea, placing it on the coaster with a little more force than necessary. "Lily's top of her class, Mrs. Thompson. Uno's just for fun." Mrs. Thompson sipped her tea, making a face. "Well, as long as she's not falling behind. David tells me you're managing well enough, but I have to see it for myself. And making sure he's not burdened with more than he can handle is part of that." I sat down across from her, forcing a calm I didn't feel. "David isn't burdened. He's thrilled. We all are. This is our family now." She stood up, smoothing her skirt. "Well, I'll let David know my thoughts. He deserves to hear it from his mother." As she walked to the door, I followed, my voice firmer now. "David hears everything from me, Mrs. Thompson. We don't keep secrets or run reports to parents. We're adults, building a life together." She paused at the door, her back to me. "Just remember, Elise, I'm his mother. My approval might not mean much to you, but it means a lot to him." Trying to get along with Mrs. Thompson was like trying to smooth a crumpled paper. No matter how hard you try, the lines are always there. But for David's sake, I kept at it. One evening, I decided to host a dinner. Nothing fancy, just a casual thing to maybe melt some of that ice. I'm making your mom's favorite tonight, cherry pie. Think it'll win her over? I asked David as he helped me set the table. David chuckled, straightening a fork. Mom's tough, but nobody can resist your cherry pie. Just take it easy, yeah? She can be, a lot. The plan was simple. Dinner at 6, pie for dessert, and hopefully some kind of truce by the end of the night. But as luck would have it, just as I pulled the pie out of the oven, looking golden and perfect, Lily's school called. Mom, it's Miss Carson. She says I left my project at school, and it's due tomorrow. Lily's face was a mix of panic and hope. Okay, we'll go get it. Can't have all your hard work go to waste, I said, glancing at the clock. Mrs. Thompson would be here any minute. I scribbled a quick note for her, just in case we missed each other. Back in 8. Make yourself at home. We rushed to the school and back, making it in just under 20 minutes. When we walked in, Mrs. Thompson was seated at the table, looking like she owned the place. David was pouring her a glass of wine. Dinner went by with the usual small talk. How's work, how's school, the weather, safe topics that kept the night from turning into a minefield. Then came the pie. I served everyone a generous slice, smiling a bit too eagerly. Hope it's as good as you remember, Mrs. Thompson. We all took a bite, and immediately, Lily's face scrunched up. Ugh, Mom, this tastes weird. Confused, I took a bite myself. My mouth was assaulted by a blast of salt and sour, a far cry from what I'd prepared. I looked up at Mrs. Thompson, who was watching me with a smug look. This doesn't taste right, Elise. Did you follow the recipe properly? She asked, her voice dripping with condescension. Of course, I made it just like I started, but then it hit me. She had been alone in the house. My eyes narrowed. David, noticing the tension, jumped in. Maybe it's just a bad batch of cherries? Let's not sweat it. How about we order some pizza instead? Sounds great, I managed to say, my eyes still fixed on Mrs. Thompson. After David went to order the pizza, Mrs. Thompson leaned in close and whispered, maybe next time you'll think twice before leaving me alone in your kitchen. I was stunned. She had actually sabotaged the pie. I kept my cool, though. Is this how you want to play it? Just making sure you know where you stand, she hissed back. The rest of the evening was a blur. Pizza came, we ate, and Mrs. Thompson left soon after, not a word about the pie. David seemed oblivious, happy even that we'd managed to salvage the night with takeout. Life after the pie incident felt like walking on eggshells, especially whenever Mrs. Thompson was around. But David, bless his heart, thought a change of scenery might do us some good. So, out of the blue, he comes home one evening, all smiles, waving a set of plane tickets like he's won the lottery. Guess what, Elise? We're going on vacation. And not just any vacation, India, he announced, practically bouncing on his heels. India? Seriously? I couldn't hide my surprise. India had been on my bucket list for as long as I could remember. But what about, your mom? David's face fell a bit, then he shrugged. Well, she's coming too. Thought it'd be good for all of us to spend some quality time together, bond a bit. I sighed, already dreading the drama, but not wanting to burst his bubble. Alright, if you think it's a good idea. When do we leave? In 2 weeks. I got it all planned out. We'll see the Taj Mahal, ride elephants, the whole 9 yards. His enthusiasm was infectious, and despite my reservations, I found myself getting excited about the trip. The weeks leading up to the trip were a whirlwind of planning and packing. Lists, shopping, more lists. The night before we were set to leave, David and I sat down with a map and a guidebook, marking out all the spots we wanted to visit. You really think your mom is going to ride an elephant? I joked, trying to keep the mood light. David laughed. I'd pay good money to see that. The day of the departure was chaotic. Bags everywhere, Lily running around in excitement, and Mrs. Thompson, well, she was her usual self, complaining about everything from the weight of her luggage to the timing of the flight. Why does it have to be so early? And why India? It's so far and exotic, she grumbled as we loaded up the car. Mom, come on, it's an adventure. Elise has always wanted to see India. We're going to have a great time, David tried to reassure her, giving me a wink. At the airport, Mrs. Thompson's mood hadn't improved. She fussed over her boarding pass, her seating arrangement, the lack of her preferred magazine at the airport shop. On the plane, Mrs. Thompson ended up seated separately from us, much to everyone's relief. She had managed to argue her way into an aisle seat closer to the front, away from our block of 3. As we soared above the clouds, heading towards an unknown experience, I couldn't help but wonder if this trip would bring us closer together or drive a deeper wedge. But ready or not, India awaited, and with it, a journey that was sure to be unforgettable. India was nothing short of an eye-opener, colors, chaos, and smells that could knock you sideways if you weren't careful. We'd been having the time of our lives, except, of course, for Mrs. Thompson, who found something to complain about at every turn. Still, David, Lily, and I were making the most of it, soaking up every experience. After a long day of sightseeing, we were back at the hotel, exhausted but happy. I was unpacking some of our stuff when I noticed Lily looking guilty, fidgeting next to her suitcase. What's up, Bug? You look like you're sitting on a secret, I nudged her gently. She bit her lip, then pulled out a package from her bag. Mom, look. Grandma gave this to me at the airport and told me to keep it a secret. She said it was a snack for when I get hungry. My heart sank as I saw the package. It was bacon. Lily, sweetheart, you know we can't bring meat into the country like this, right? It's against the law here. Lily's eyes widened, teary. I didn't know, Mom. Grandma said it was okay. Just then, David walked in. What's going on here? He asked, seeing the upset looks. I handed him the package, my voice tense. Your mom snuck this into Lily's bag. It's bacon, David. What? No, she wouldn't. His voice trailed off as he looked from the bacon to Lily's upset face. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do anything bad, Lily cried out. David knelt down and hugged her. It's not your fault, honey. You didn't know. He looked up at me, worry creasing his forehead. Elise, what are we going to do? First, we get rid of this properly. Then, we need to have a serious talk with your mother, I said, more annoyed than ever. David nodded, still shocked but supportive. Yeah, okay. Let's handle this. We managed to dispose of the bacon without any issues, thankfully. But the mood was set for a confrontation. We found Mrs. Thompson in the hotel lounge, sipping tea as if she hadn't a care in the world. Mom, can we talk? David's tone was firm as he approached her, a sign he meant business. Mrs. Thompson looked up, her expression wary. What is it now, David? Can't you see I'm trying to relax? David didn't waste any time. Why did you give Lily bacon to bring here? You know that's illegal. It could have gotten us in serious trouble. Mrs. Thompson scoffed, rolling her eyes. Oh, please, it was just a few slices. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. It's not about the quantity, Mom. It's about following the law. And putting Lily in that position? Really? David's frustration was palpable. I stepped in, unable to hold back. Mrs. Thompson, what were you thinking? Putting your granddaughter in such a risky situation, just for what? A snack? She bristled, defensive. I was thinking of my granddaughter, unlike you, who drags her halfway across the world to places like this. That's enough, Mom. You're not making any sense, and what you did was wrong. Plain and simple, David cut her off. The conversation went around in circles for a while, with Mrs. Thompson refusing to see reason. But David stood his ground, and I couldn't have been prouder. Later that night, in our room, David apologized for his mother's behavior again. I'm sorry, Elise. I never thought she'd go this far. It's not your fault, David. But we need to be more careful with her. Who knows what else she might pull, I said, the day's events weighing heavily on my mind. David nodded, pulling me close. We'll handle it, together. No more secrets, no more sneaking around. We're a team, right? Right, I agreed, feeling a bit better knowing we were in this together. Still, as I watched Lily sleep peacefully, unaware of the storm her grandmother had almost caused, I knew this trip was going to be more than just a vacation. It was a test of our family's resilience. Our trip to India turned out to be way better than I feared. We saw incredible places, and even Mrs. Thompson kept her cool, which made me think maybe I had been too harsh on her. By the end of our trip, I was almost relaxed about her being around us. Maybe, just maybe, we could all get along after all. The day we were to head back, everything seemed smooth. We were at the airport, luggage in tow, checking off the last items from our travel list. That's when Lily tugged at my sleeve, her face scrunched up a bit. "Mom, I need to go to the bathroom," she whispered. "Sure, sweetie. Let's go," I replied, turning to Mrs. Thompson. "Could you hold my bag for a minute?" She smiled, a bit too sweetly. "Of course, dear." Handing over my bag, I led Lily to the restroom, thinking nothing of it. When we came back, Mrs. Thompson was standing there, a triumphant smirk playing on her lips as she handed back my bag. "Thanks," I muttered, but something about her expression set off alarms in my head. I didn't dwell on it, just handed the bag to David. "Here, can you take this through? My hands are full." "Sure thing," he said, slinging it over his shoulder as we headed to the security checkpoint. Lily and I passed through first, easy and clear. I waited on the other side, watching as David placed the bag on the conveyor belt. That's when everything went sideways. The security officers at the monitor started whispering urgently, pointing at the screen before motioning David aside. 2 more officers approached, their faces stern. "What's going on?" I called out, stepping closer, but a security officer held up a hand to stop me. "Ma'am, please wait here," he said. Panic clawed at my chest as I watched them talk to David, his face growing paler by the second. Then, without warning, they escorted him to a small room off to the side. Mrs. Thompson rushed over and grabbed my arm, her earlier smugness replaced by concern. "Elise, what's happening? Why are they taking David?" I pulled my arm away, keeping my voice steady, despite the chaos. I gave him my bag to carry through the scanner. "They found something in it, something that shouldn't have been there." Her eyes widened, and for a second, I saw fear flicker across her face. Without another word, she tried to follow the officers who took David, but the customs officials stopped her. That's when she lost it, her composure cracking like thin ice underfoot. "It was me. I did it. I put those things in her bag," she shouted, trying to push past the officers. The officers, now alert to a deeper issue, brought her back to where I was standing. They started asking rapid-fire questions. It was then that Mrs. Thompson broke down completely, crying and shaking as she confessed. "While Elise was with her daughter, I put the money and medicines in her bag," she sobbed, her voice echoing in the busy airport. "I wanted her to get caught, to be held back here while we went home." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was one thing to suspect your mother-in-law didn't like you, but another to hear her admit to framing you. The customs officers took us all aside to sort through this mess. As we stood there, with officers buzzing around, taking notes, Mrs. Thompson turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "Elise, I'm so sorry. I thought if you were out of the picture, David would come back, that he'd realize his mistake. But I was wrong, so wrong. Please, can you forgive me?" I stared at her, feeling a mix of anger and pity. "You didn't just make a mistake. You almost ruined our lives." The officers had listened to everything, and after confirming the story with the surveillance footage, they decided to release David. He came back to us, his face a mask of shock and relief. When he saw his mother in handcuffs, something inside him seemed to break. "Mom, how could you?" His voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the noise around us like a knife. "I wanted to protect you," Mrs. Thompson cried, trying to reach out to him. The police took Mrs. Thompson away to process her for the crimes she admitted to, leaving us in a bubble of stunned silence. As we headed to the gate to catch our rescheduled flight, I leaned on David, the events of the day replaying in my mind. His mother's actions were unforgivable, and as we walked, a plan began to form on how we would move forward, how we would rebuild the trust and safety that had been so severely shattered. Back home, the silence of our living room felt like a stark contrast to the chaotic noise of the airport police station. David and I sat with cups of tea that had long gone cold, the events of the past few days settling around us like dust after a storm. David broke the silence first, his voice low and weary. "I can't believe she'd go that far, Elise. I'm sorry you had to go through all that because of her." I looked over at him, seeing the strain in his eyes. "It's not your fault, David. But we do need to think about how we move forward from here. We can't let this slide." "Yeah, I know." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "The lawyer mentioned a restraining order might be necessary. Given everything, I think he might be right." It was a tough pill to swallow, the idea of legally barring his mother from our lives, but it was a measure of the severity of her actions. It would give us peace of mind, at least. She needs to understand the consequences of her actions, legally and personally. David nodded, rubbing his face with his hands. "Yeah, I'll call him tomorrow. Get it started. It's just hard, you know? She's my mom." I reached out, taking his hand. "I know she is. And this doesn't mean you don't love her. But we have to protect our family, David. We have to protect Lily." A few days later, the restraining order was in place. It was a surreal feeling, knowing that it had come to this. When David told Lily, he did it in a way that was gentle, but honest. "Grandma made some very bad choices, and for now, we need to make sure we're all safe," he explained to her. Lily nodded, her understanding far beyond her years. "Is Grandma going to be okay?" she asked, her small voice full of concern. "We hope so, sweetheart. We hope she gets the help she needs," I added, pulling her into a hug. Life started to settle into a new kind of normal. The days passed with fewer worries about unexpected disruptions, and slowly, the tension began to ease from our shoulders. Mrs. Thompson had spent 2 months in a local prison and was then deported back to the United States. The image of her, desperate and broken, was stark, but it was her actions, not mine, that led us here. Days passed, and the ripple effects of Mrs. Thompson's actions were felt throughout our wider circle of family and friends. People who had once been fixtures in our lives began distancing themselves from her. Her betrayal wasn't just personal, it was profound, affecting everyone connected to us. She lived alone now, isolated by her own deeds. It was a harsh reality, but a self-inflicted one. One evening, as we sat watching a movie together, wrapped in blankets and sharing a bowl of popcorn, David paused the movie and looked over at me. "Elise, I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened. And I just want to say thank you. For being so strong, for being the rock for this family." I smiled, leaning into him. "I do it for us, for all of us. Because that's what you do when you love someone, you stand by them." As we resumed the movie, I looked over at Lily, her eyes heavy with sleep, safe in the knowledge that she was loved and protected. Reflecting on everything, I realized that family isn't just about the good times. It's about who stands with you during the trials, who holds your hand when the path gets rocky. Hi, my name is Emily Roberts, and I'm just your average 28-year-old woman from Chicago. Ever since I was a little kid, I've been obsessed with baking and cooking up delicious treats in the kitchen. It was like therapy for me, measuring, mixing, getting my hands dirty. Watching something go from a bunch of basic ingredients to a mouth-watering pastry or cake was pure magic. After high school, the obvious choice was attending culinary school to become a professional pastry chef. My parents didn't have much money, so I worked my butt off at a diner throughout those years, but it was worth it when I landed my dream job at Delilah's Bakery right after graduating. I started out at minimum wage, working insane hours, but I busted my ass and became one of Delilah's star bakers in just a couple years. It was during one of my bakery shifts that I met Tom Anderson, an account executive for a software company. He came in one morning looking tired as hell. "Mornin' darlin', the usual?" I chirped over the counter. Tom just grunted and slid a $20 across. "Surprise me with something good, sweetheart. Sales been kicking my ass this week." Since Tom looked like he needed a pick-me-up, I hooked him up with an extra-large banana bread loaf, my specialty. "On the house, hon, everyone needs a little treat now and then." The guy looked stunned. "Wow, thank you. You're an angel." He tore off a chunk and his eyes rolled back. "Oh my god, this is insane. You made this?" I blushed. Guilty as charged. Just a little banana bread to brighten your day. Well, consider my day bright, beautiful. I'm Tom Anderson. That's how we met, me slinging pastries and him being a regular customer who always left me the nicest compliments. We got to know each other more over the following weeks, flirted shamelessly, and he eventually worked up the nerve to ask me out on a real date. The rest was history. We dated for 2 years before Tom finally proposed. I was over the moon. This guy deeply appreciated my culinary talents and had fallen for the real me. Well, perfect except for one thing. Tom's mother Jane was a nightmare from the first time I met her. She looked me up and down like I was a cockroach when Tom brought me over for Sunday dinner. "Ma, this is my girlfriend Emily. Emily, this is my mom Jane," Tom said, putting his arm around me. Jane's thin lips pursed as she gave me an obvious once-over. "A pastry chef? That's interesting." She said it like she was trying not to gag. "Yes ma'am, I work at Delilah's bakery downtown." "Tom says you've tried my banana bread before?" I tried to be friendly with an outstretched hand. Jane just stared at my hand like it was diseased, before turning up her nose. I didn't realize that was made by the pastry girl at the counter. I just assumed Delilah made everything herself. That was it, the claws came out from this evil old harpy on our very first meeting. I wanted to slap her and storm out, but Tom kept me calm, whispering that his mom was just a little rough and to give her a chance. After getting married, I decided it was time to take my passion for baking to the next level. So I quit and got licensed to operate a home bakery business. "Oh how adorable, you're playing kid chef again." Jane cackled. "I give it 6 months before the oven mitt comes off and reality sets in, sweet cheeks." Tom cut in, putting his hand on my arm. "Lay off her, Ma. Emily's worked her tail off to get here, she's got a real entrepreneurial spirit." "Oh, I'm terrified." Jane threw her hands up mockingly. The great queen of cupcakes is finally branching out from behind that bakery counter cash register. What an inspirational, gutsy career move. My face burned, but I kept my cool. "Thank you for that stunning vote of confidence. I appreciate your support as I follow my dreams. But you know what? Spite can be an incredible motivator." So as the months rolled on, I baked and baked my little heart out, taking custom orders through word of mouth and social media. Jane constantly ragged on me about playing make-believe as a baker. But orders and 5-star reviews from clients started rolling in like crazy. I had a true knack for crafting gorgeous custom cakes, cookies, pastries, you name it. "Have you seen the latest for Emily's Eats?" Tom gushed one night over dinner, scrolling through my Instagram feed. "This girl is incredible. Her croissant cereal treats are blowing up." Jane shot me a withering look over her glass of wine. "Well, isn't that wonderful, dear? Getting those internet likes must be very validating." Although I'm not quite sure how viable a business based on baked goods photo shoots can really be. Things only got more tense as my home bakery grew. Jane seemingly took personal offense to my hustle and grind as Emily's Eats blew up. Somebody ordered a 2-tier salted caramel cake for a wedding in Lincoln Park this weekend. I excitedly showed Tom the order one evening. This could be my big break to get into the Chicago event space. Jane snorted from the couch. "Oh how wonderful, sweetie. A locally catered cake for a couple of yuppies' nuptials. You'll really make it big with jobs like that. Better yuppie nuptials than nitpicking and nagging all day, like some miserable gossips I know. I fired back, losing my cool. Jane looked ready to swing before Tom stepped in. Alright, that's enough from both of you. Mom, stop crapping on Emily's dream before it even gets off the ground. And you. He shot me a look. Don't let her jabs get you riled up. This is your passion we're talking about. He was right. Every time I got flustered arguing with that wretched woman, I got sloppier in the kitchen. And I couldn't afford any mistakes, not when I was pouring every ounce of energy into making Emily's eats a success. One day, I got a huge order from one of my regular customers, Mrs. Wilkins. She wanted a big fancy cake and like 50 assorted pastries for some corporate shindig at her husband's office. This was a massive deal for my little home bakery business. Listen up, Emily, Mrs. Wilkins said in that no-nonsense tone of hers. This order needs to be absolutely perfect, you hear? We're talking the biggest wigs at my Richards company. If this goes well, you can bet your sweet behind I'll be referring you to all my high society friends. For the next few days, I worked myself to the bone prepping for Mrs. Wilkins' huge order. I wanted to craft a showstopper cake with elegant piped rosettes and handmade gum paste flowers. And the pastries had to be delicious little works of art. The morning I was supposed to deliver everything, I was a bundle of nerves. But I had baked and decorated each item with care, checking them over 1,000,000 times for any imperfections. By 10 a.m., I had it all packaged up and looking like a dream. That's when Jane barged in, ruining my flow. There you are, lazybones. I need you to run to the post office right this minute. She shoved a shipping label in my face. I ordered something special online and it requires a signature. I groaned in frustration. Are you serious? I'm literally about to head out with this massive order I've been working on for days. The only words I should be hearing from you are why yes, Mother Jane, I'll be happy to run your errand right away. Jane waggled her bony finger at me. Against my better judgment, I agreed to Jane's stupid demand just to get her out of my face. She gave me a sickly sweet smile as I grabbed my purse. Wonderful, that's a good girl. Now hurry along and I'll make sure your little baked nothings get delivered safely while you're out. Something about her tone raised red flags, but I was too frazzled to think much of it. I figured Jane was just being her usual awful self, condescending my business as always. When I got home, Jane said with a grin she had given the cakes and pastries to the courier. 2 days later, I got a call from the furious client, Mr. Wilkins himself. What in the goddamn hell were those inedible monstrosities you tried to pass off as pastries, Emily? He shouted so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Sir, I don't understand. This has to be some mistake. I was openly weeping at this point, all my hard work and biggest chance at success crumbling around me. I followed all the instructions to a T, perfectly tempering the chocolate, using fresh ingredients. Please let me make this right. You're damn right you'll be making this right by refunding me every cent and removing any association with my company from your cheap little website and socials. With that, he hung up, leaving me a sobbing, hysterical mess on the kitchen floor. Over the next few months, my budding home bakery business completely withered and died thanks to the horrific reviews from the Wilkins disaster. Jane, meanwhile, watched the fallout with glee. Well, isn't this just a shame? She crooned one evening as I sat despondently scrolling through the scathing online comments about my former business. Although I can't say I'm terribly surprised. I warned you not to get your hopes up too high with this cute little baking fantasy. Baking had always been my biggest passion, and having it ruthlessly mocked by Jane made the failure that much more devastating. For a while, I just stopped getting in the kitchen altogether. Come on, babe, you can't let that witch get you down like this, Tom pleaded one night as I laid on the couch, staring off blankly. Baking is your calling, don't let my mom's nasty comments make you give up on your dream. His pep talk actually gave me an idea. Maybe I could start doing baking tutorials and tips videos online to remind people how skilled I was. I spent the next few months throwing myself into cultivating an audience on Instagram, YouTube, you name it. I filmed step-by-step guides to my favorite recipes, shared baking hacks I'd learned over the years, and did calming videos just doing things like piping frosting decorations. To my surprise, people actually started tuning in and engaging with my content in a big way. Eventually, my follower counts on the various platforms started growing exponentially. "Damn it, Emily," Tom beamed one night, looking at my YouTube stats. "You just hit 100,000 subscribers. That's insane." Just then, Jane came shuffling into the room, wrinkling her nose at Tom and I smiling over my laptop. "What's got you two grinning like idiots?" Jane snapped. "Don't tell me your baked goods cart finally made it onto the evening news." I rolled my eyes. "If you must know, my baking tutorial videos online are getting wildly popular. I just hit over 100,000 subscribers." Jane's face instantly soured into a frown. "Is that so? How delightful." The sarcasm dripped from her voice. "Wasting all your time baking again for strangers on the internet to gawk at, I see." "It's not just wasting time, Jane," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "I've built a real following of people who appreciate my skills and knowledge. This whole thing could lead to amazing opportunities down the road." "Oh, like what?" Jane scoffed. "Getting your own public access television show? Maybe a baking blog no one reads? Shall I start setting aside money for your future unemployment now or later?" I fought the urge to cry as Jane laughed coldly, clearly threatened by my small restart towards pursuing my passion again. No matter how much I accomplished, she always found words that hit me hard. One day, I bumped into an old friend, Jenna, who I went to culinary school with years ago. She looked just as bright and bubbly as always. "Well, I'll be darned if it isn't Emily Roberts," Jenna gushed, pulling me into a big hug. "Girl, it's been ages. How the heck are you?" "Jenna, hey. Wow, yeah, it really has been too long," I said, returning her warm embrace. "I'm doing okay, you know, keeping busy with my at-home baking business and all." Jenna's eyes went wide with recognition. "No way, you're Emily's Eats? The baking blog with all those gorgeous dessert tutorials that's blown up lately?" I gave an embarrassed shrug. "Huh, yeah, that's me. I do love baking up a storm for my little online audience." Speaking of which, Jenna adopted a more pensive look. "Emily, you've got to come be a guest on my cooking show. We've got a slot open for a baking demo in next week's episode." I tried to mask my giddiness, shuffling my feet coyly. "Well gosh, if you really think making a cameo could help grow my brand, then I'd be honored." We exchanged contacts so Jenna's crew could send over the show deets. As I headed home, my head was still spinning at this shocking stroke of good luck. Me, baking live on TV? Could this opportunity get any more perfect to rehab my reputation after the Wilkins fiasco? When I filled Tom in over dinner, he matched my level of excitement. "Damn it, that's insane. My girl, baking it up on live TV, talk about the ultimate comeback." I swatted him playfully. "Oh stop, I'm sure it won't be that big a deal. Just a little guest spot to get some extra exposure, nothing crazy." But of course, Jane had to come sweeping in with her signature negativity to burst my bubble. "What's all this nonsense I hear about you being on the television, baking like a circus monkey for housewives to gawk at?" I rolled my eyes. "Jane, must you always diminish everything positive in my life? This is a huge opportunity for great exposure for my home baking business." Jane simply tittered mockingly before turning businesslike. Yes, that's all well and good. Now about getting me and Tom audience tickets." My eyes boggled. "I'm sorry, what? You want tickets to come watch the taping?" "Well, of course," Jane said in a tone like she was explaining something to a small child. "I've been dying for a chance to appear on television myself for ages, even if just as an extra in the crowd." After some browbeating, I eventually gave in to Jane's insufferable demands and called up Jenna to ask for a couple of audience passes, figuring it would be easier than dealing with the old hag's tantrum over being denied. Thanks so much for this. My whole crew is stoked to have you," Jenna gushed when I arrived at the studio the day of taping. She ushered me over to the kitchen set area where high-definition cameras were set up around the blazing hot lights of the instructional cooking station. "When we go live in 3 hours, you'll be baking up your famous salted caramel apple pie and a platter of those drool-worthy lemon cupcakes you always post." While I got glammed up for my big television debut, Jane and Tom got seated in the front row of the studio audience per Jane's insistent demands. Part of me was relieved to have their familiar faces there to lean on. The other part knew Jane would find some way to undermine or sabotage me yet again out of her usual jealousy and resentment. After that, I headed into the kitchen area to do some practice runs for my baking demo. I wanted to get the motions and plating down perfectly before going live. The pies and cupcakes I prepped looked downright mouth-watering, hopefully a good sign. After one last check of each dish, the director announced a brief break before going live. I took the opportunity to use the restroom and gather my nerves before the big moment. But when I got back to the kitchen set, Jenna was waiting with a concerned look on her face. "Hey, sorry to bug you before we go live, but you'll never believe this. Our stage manager noticed your mother-in-law snooping around your workspace a few minutes ago." A wave of dread and panic washed over me as I rushed to examine the workspace. Jenna was right, some of my prepped ingredients had clearly been moved around. I couldn't believe Jane would stoop this low, sabotaging my big television debut by deliberately replacing my ingredients. Hot, angry tears sprang to my eyes as Jenna pulled me into a comforting hug. "Hey, it's okay, we'll just get you fresh ingredients, no sweat," she murmured softly, stroking my back. "Everything's gonna be fine, I promise." Jenna quickly summoned a production assistant to race out and purchase all new baking supplies from a nearby store while I tried to collect myself. I could feel Jane's smug leer burning into the back of my head from her front row audience seat. When the new, untainted ingredients finally arrived, it was time to go live. I took a few deep, calming breaths and stepped up to the cooking area, my face set in grim determination. As I got to work whipping up the salted caramel apple pie and lemon cupcake batters, I made sure to narrate each step for the viewers at home. Jenna chimed in occasionally with encouraging words about my impeccable technique. "Just look at Emily's precise piping work on those cupcake swirls, folks. TV perfect if I've ever seen it." After what felt like no time at all, it was the big moment. Jenna welcomed a panel of audience members up to sample my creations live on air. I felt my heart pounding as the first taste tester, a middle-aged woman, politely took a bite of the salted caramel apple pie. I searched her face for any hint of reaction, positive or negative. The woman's eyes suddenly went wide, seemingly in surprise. "Oh my, this is just heavenly!" she exclaimed once she finally swallowed the bite. That perfect crumbly yet flaky crust, the zing of the salted caramel, good lord, it's like a flavor explosion. A giddy smile broke out across my face as the other samplers voiced similar oohs and ahs of delight at each bite. Jenna shot me a big wink and double thumbs up, clearly estetic her secret weapon baking guest was knocking it out of the park. I snuck a peek at Jane out in the front row, absolutely seething with her arms crossed tightly. Good, let that wretched, bitter old crone sit and stew for once, watching my success happen right in front of her hateful eyes. As the polite clapping died down, Jenna took center stage with a devilish grin. "Well folks, I think we can all agree Emily's baking is, indeed, out of this world incredible. But, what if I told you our miraculous pastry wizard overcame a last-minute act of sabotage just to dazzle us here today?" The audience let out a collective murmur of confusion. A large screen behind Jenna and I flickered to life, displaying security cam footage from earlier that morning. We watched in silence as Jane's hunched figure snuck up to my prepped workstation, looked around furtively, then proceeded to open various containers and jars, seemingly tampering with their contents. The video cut out as a deafening hush fell over the studio audience. Everyone instinctively turned to gawk at Jane sitting frozen in her front row. Finally, the silence was broken by Tom, my sweet, supportive husband, suddenly standing up and bellowing at the top of his lungs. "Enough, mother! How dare you try sabotaging Emily's big break out of your own pathetic jealousy? I'm so sorry, baby. Tom turned to me with tears in his eyes. I'm so sorry. I never saw her toxic, abusive behavior for what it was sooner. You never deserved any of her gaslighting, manipulative behavior. The cameras panned over to Jane, absolutely pallid and shrinking into her seat in horror, as Jenna offered her the microphone and asked if she'd care to explain her sabotaging actions. For a moment, Jane just sat there frozen, silently opening and closing her mouth. But when she finally did speak, it was with a scathing venom. You smug, ungrateful little thing. She spat out the insult directly at me, causing the audience to gasp in shock. You think your cute little baking hobby makes you so special, huh? That this is the big break that finally earns you some undeserved self-respect? Jane let out a high, deranged cackle. Well, I've got a wake-up call for you, Missy. It was me who ruined that all-important catered lunch that destroyed your pathetic business. Me. From the very start, all I'd dreamed of was destroying you, your disgusting baking career, your undeserved relationship with my son, everything. Seeing Jane unravel completely into her true, unfiltered toxic self was bone-chilling. She turned her furious glare directly into the camera lens, screaming with heightened mania. I won't let this nothing, this lazy, slovenly chef wannabe, tarnish the honor of being married into the Anderson family name any longer with her sham baking act. You hear me, Emily? I'll destroy you if it's the last thing I dash. Suddenly, Jane's hate-filled tirade was cut short by a loud thud, as Tom had charged from his seat and full-on knocked the microphone out of her hands, leaving the audiences shrieking in shock. Thereafter, Tom pulled me into a loving embrace as the audience roared their approval. I buried my face in his chest, alternating between sobs of joy and disbelief at how everything had unfolded. That TV appearance was a total game-changer for my life and career. Turns out, people just can't get enough of baking drama mixed with unhinged family meltdowns. Jenna's baking show scored its highest ratings ever from all the insanity that went down. TV bloggers and reviewers raved about what an unscripted television milestone it was. Clips from the episode, particularly Jane's deranged rant where she admitted sabotaging me, went viral almost instantly. Overnight, I became known as the long-suffering baking blogger who finally stood up to her evil mother-in-law from hell. It was honestly overwhelming, my little online baking tips channel getting that much mainstream exposure. Dude, this is nuts. I've already gained like 200,000 new YouTube subscribers just from that TV fiasco. I showed Tom the numbers a few days later, still in disbelief. Brands started hitting me up about sponsorship opportunities. Television talent scouts DM'd about potentially hosting my own show someday. It was a wildly surreal experience being lifted up in the aftermath of what had been one of the most traumatizing, horrific days of my life. Is this really happening? I marveled aloud while reading a lucrative sponsorship offer out loud to Tom one night over glasses of celebratory wine. Am I actually a full-on celebrity baker now? Tom grinned and clinked my glass. You're damn right, baby. And you earned every ounce of it with your crazy talent and mental toughness to endure all this from you-know-who for so long. I felt myself blush at the high praise. Looking back, maybe all that torment had been a blessing in disguise. The thing that truly compelled me to hone my craft with laser focus, while simultaneously developing the thick skin needed to endure hurtful critics and naysayers. Jane had been the ultimate naysayer, and I had still managed to make my baking dream a success in spite of her. As for Jane herself, let's just say between the public humiliation of having her abusive behavior exposed so rawly, and Tom completely cutting her out of our lives, she ended up retreating back to whatever sad little hell dimension she crawled out of. Without so much as a text or call from her, we quietly packed up and moved out of the home to completely cut ties. We found a beautiful new place we could truly make our own, splurging on upgrades here and there thanks to my booming influencer income. My name's Joanne. Married young to Tom, my college flame, we thought we'd figured it all out. Foolish, right? Fresh out of college, fueled by love and little else, we dove headfirst into life together. But real life? It hit hard and fast. Our tiny apartment was chaos in the form of endless diapers and late-night cries from our newborn, Sophie. I'd rock her to sleep, exhausted, while Tom was out living it up. "Why aren't you home more?" I finally asked him one night, my voice cracking from tiredness. "Tom, just back from another night with friends, reeked of booze." "Joe, relax. Gotta unwind somehow, right?" He shrugged, dodging a diaper bag like it was a grenade. "Unwind?" I echoed, my tone sharper than I intended. "I'm here alone with Sophie while you party." "This isn't what we agreed on, Tom." "Jesus, Joe. I'm just trying to have a little fun." He rolled his eyes, defensive. "You used to be fun, remember?" That stung. Sure, I remembered. But things change when you're the only adult in the house. The next 2 years were a blur of similar nights. Tom's charm faded fast, eaten away by his selfishness and my growing resentment. Our final blowout was monumental. I'd just paid off a pile of bills, finding our account drained more than usual. "Tom, we need to talk," I started, as soon as he walked in. He looked at me, wary of my tone. "The bank account's nearly empty. Again. What's going on?" "Oh, relax, Joe. I needed some new gear. Got a great deal on a set of golf clubs." "Golf clubs?" I snapped, my patience gone. "While I'm clipping coupons and you're out dropping hundreds? God, you're such a nag." Tom fired back, throwing his keys on the table. "Can't I enjoy my money without your constant bitching? I didn't sign up for this domestic crap." That was it. I knew right then we were done. "If that's how you feel, maybe you should leave," I said quietly, the fight draining out of me. The next day, he packed a bag and left. Just like that. No goodbye to Sophie, no final argument. Just the end of us. Raising Sophie alone wasn't easy. Every day was a test of my will, a balance of work, childcare, and keeping it together so my daughter never felt the hole her father left. I grew up fast, out of necessity. The playful college girl I was disappeared, replaced by a woman who knew how to stand alone. Tom? He sent money, at least. Every month, without fail, alimony arrived. I never told Sophie much about him, didn't want her childhood marred by his choices. She knew her dad wasn't around, and for a long while, that was enough. As she grew, so did her questions about Tom, and they got harder to answer without stirring up old hurts. But I kept things level, never letting bitterness color her view. He was her dad, after all. That respect, that connection, it mattered, for her. Sophie's 18th birthday hit like a milestone. She was already more together than I ever was at her age. Her acceptance letter from a college in the city where my mom lived arrived the same week, setting the stage for a big celebration. "I got in, Mom. I can't believe it." Sophie waved the letter like a victory flag. I pulled her into a tight hug, laughing with her. "I never doubted you for a second. Law school, here you come." The plan was to throw a dinner party, nothing fancy, just family and close friends. And, yeah, Tom. I figured it was time to maybe bridge that gap, for Sophie's sake. I sent him an invite. Didn't expect much, but he surprised us both by showing up. He looked good, which annoyed me more than I wanted to admit. Cleaned up, dressed sharp. When Sophie saw him, her face lit up, and that was worth any awkwardness. "Dad." She rushed over, giving him a big hug. Tom looked a bit stiff, but he hugged her back. "Hey, kiddo. Look at you, all grown up." Tom said, his voice a mix of pride. "And you'll need this. For all your classes and stuff." Sophie's eyes went huge. "Oh my God, Dad, seriously? This is too much." "Nothing's too much for my girl," Tom said, a bit too loudly, like he was trying to prove a point to both of us. The dinner went better than expected. We all chatted, even laughed a bit. Tom kept throwing compliments my way, which I deflected with jokes. Too much water under the bridge for flattery, to scrub it clean. "Joanne, you haven't changed a bit," Tom said as he sipped his wine. Sure haven't, I replied, dry as toast. Still don't take crap from anyone, especially not men who think a smartphone can make up for lost time. Tom coughed, almost choking on his wine. Yeah, well, I'm just trying here, Joanne. Sophie watched us, eyes darting back and forth like she was at a tennis match. I softened a bit. For her. After Sophie left to celebrate her college acceptance with friends, Tom and I found ourselves alone, lingering over the remnants of dinner. The night unexpectedly turned soft and warm, full of old laughter and shared memories. You know, Joanne, I've missed this, us. Tom confessed as we sat side by side on the couch, our hands tentatively reaching out for each other. I glanced at him, the familiar curve of his smile tugging at my own lips. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I've missed this too. One thing led to another, and the evening slipped into a night filled with rekindled passion that I hadn't realized I still harbored for him. By morning, wrapped in the echo of whispered promises and dreams, we decided to give our marriage another shot. Within a few weeks, we were standing in City Hall, exchanging vows once more. It was just Sophie, Tom's sister Linda, and us. Linda had always been a rock, even when Tom and I were at our worst, and her presence at the ceremony meant the world to me. Really proud of you both, Linda whispered as she hugged us after the ceremony. Make it count this time, okay? We will, I assured her, squeezing Tom's hand. Moving into Tom's house felt like stepping into a new life. It was a beautiful place, spacious and filled with light. Sophie was overjoyed about our reunion, and her visits from college were full of laughter and family dinners that I had sorely missed. For a while, everything seemed perfect. But as the months rolled into a year, I noticed something off. The joint account we had wasn't growing as it should. Bills piled up, and the cushion we'd talked about building was nowhere seen. One evening, I decided to broach the subject. Tom was in his home office, papers strewn about. I knocked lightly before entering. Tom, can we talk about our finances for a sec? I asked, leaning against the doorframe. He looked up, a frown creasing his brow. Yeah, sure. What's up? I walked over, sitting down across from him. It's about the joint account. There's barely enough in there to cover the bills, and I noticed you haven't been contributing much lately. What's going on? Tom sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, Joe, I didn't want to worry you, but I've been having some money issues lately. Money issues? But your job? I started, confusion and worry knitting together in my chest. It's not as stable as it used to be. I've lost a couple of big clients, and things are tight, he explained, not meeting my eyes. But why didn't you tell me sooner? We could have figured something out together, I said, feeling both concerned and a little betrayed that he'd kept this from me. I thought I could handle it on my own. I didn't want to stress you out, Tom replied, his voice low. I took a deep breath, trying to tamp down the frustration bubbling up inside me. Tom, we're supposed to be in this together. No more going at things alone, remember? You're right, Joe. I'm sorry, he said, finally looking up at me. I'll figure it out. I promise. But as weeks turned into months, and his promises of resolving his financial woes remained unfulfilled, my doubts grew. Deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps Tom hadn't changed as much as he claimed. Year after year, the gap between Tom's promises and his actions grew wider. Every month, I found myself managing our household alone, every expense paid from my pocket, while Tom paraded his splurges online like some kind of celebrity. One evening, I cornered him as he was uploading yet another video of himself in a rented luxury car. Tom, we need to talk about the budget. The utility bill is overdue, and the groceries aren't going to buy themselves. He barely glanced up from his phone, his thumb still tapping away. Yeah, I got it, Joe. I'll transfer some cash tomorrow, okay? But you said that last week, I pressed, trying to keep my voice even. And the week before. We can't keep living like this. Tom sighed, irritation flashing in his eyes as he pocketed his phone. You're blowing this out of proportion. Everyone thinks we're doing great. That's the problem, Tom. It's all for show. Friends think we live in luxury because of your damn posts. They don't see me counting every cent, struggling to keep us afloat," I said, my voice rising with every word. "Come on, Joe, you're being dramatic. Look, I got you that necklace you always wanted," he said, attempting to smooth things over with a grin. I touched the expensive piece of jewelry around my neck, a gift that felt more like a bribe. "I didn't need a necklace, Tom. I need a partner. Someone who actually contributes." Tom's face hardened. "I contribute in my own way. Maybe if you weren't so uptight about money, you'd see that." "Uptight? Tom, I'm realistic. Someone has to be," I retorted, exasperated. "You're living in a fantasy world. These gadgets, these cars, it's like you're trying to prove something." Tom scoffed, shaking his head. "What do you want me to do, huh? Sell everything and live like a monk? No, I want you to grow up. I want you to think about us, about your family, not just your next Instagram post," I said, my words slicing through the tension between us. This conversation, like so many before it, went nowhere. Days turned into weeks, and Tom's habits remained unchanged. The luxury facade continued, each new post a slap in the face of our actual circumstances. Meanwhile, I scrimped and saved, cut corners wherever I could. Groceries were bought on sale, lights were turned off in rooms not used, and every small spare amount was squirreled away for emergencies. My life became a continuous loop of managing disasters before they could happen. The day I got the call from my brother Mike that Mom had passed away hit me like a freight train. She'd been living in the same town where my daughter Sophie attended college, and Sophie had been staying with her, helping out where she could. We decided on a modest service. Mom had never been one for pomp, and we wanted to honor her in a way that felt true to who she was. We took the train to her city, and Sophie met us at the station, looking as heartbroken as I felt. The service was simple, just close family and a few of Mom's longtime friends. I looked around for Tom during the ceremony, needing his support, but he was nowhere to be found. Leaning over to Sophie, I whispered, "Have you seen your dad?" She shook her head, her eyes red. "No, Mom. He was here a minute ago." Tom showed up right as the service was ending, just in time to throw a rose onto the grave, but missing the entire ceremony. I bit my tongue, holding back the wave of irritation and grief that threatened to overwhelm me. That evening, we gathered at Mom's house, a cozy place filled with decades of memories. Mike read out the will in the living room, his voice steady, despite the emotions I knew he was fighting. Mom had left the house to me, and her savings to him. It was what we'd both expected. But Tom's reaction was anything but expected. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the wood floor. "We should sell the house. It's practical and it makes sense financially," he announced, looking around as if expecting agreement. I stared at him, my mouth open in disbelief. "Sell it? Tom, we haven't even had a moment to grieve, and you're talking about selling?" Sophie stood up, her face flushed with anger. "I've been living here with Grandma, Dad. This is my home too. I'm staying." Tom waved her off dismissively. "It's joint property, Joanne. As your husband, I'm entitled to half. We should sell and split the money." Sophie's jaw dropped. "Dad, I'm studying law, remember? Inherited property isn't shared between spouses. It's Mom's to do with as she wishes." His face turned red, and he pointed a finger at her. "Don't you lecture me about law, young lady. Stay out of this." He turned to me, his voice rising. "If you don't sell, Joanne, I'm considering a divorce. Think about what that will mean." The room went silent, everyone staring at us. I felt every eye on me. "Let's talk about this later, Tom. Not here, not now," I said quietly, trying to keep the dignity of the occasion intact. He huffed and sat down, muttering under his breath. The rest of the evening was tense, the air thick with unsaid words and stifled grief. After everyone had left and Sophie had gone to bed, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The man lying next to me felt like a stranger. His greed, his timing, his utter disregard for what this home represented, it was all too much. The train ride home was quiet on my end, but Tom was as chatty as ever. He kept going on about selling my late mother's house, calculating out loud how much money we might get and what he'd do with it. We could really turn things around, Joe. Maybe even get that car I've been eyeing up, take it to Vegas, huh? He said, grinning like he'd already won the lottery. I just stared at my phone, not really listening to him. But then, a notification popped up, a new video from Tom on social media. Curiosity piqued, I clicked on it. There he was, standing in front of a lavish funeral setup, not my mother's simple service. His face was somber, his voice soft as he talked about losing someone so close, like a second mother. The video was slick, his words rehearsed. Over 1 million views. Comments flooded in, offering condolences and praises for his sensitivity. I felt a cold anger settle in my stomach. So, this was why he'd missed most of Mom's funeral. He was too busy playing the grieving son at a stranger's ceremony across the cemetery to boost his social media image. All through the train ride, Tom babbled on about the house sale and his plans. With that money, Joe, think about it. We could really live it up. That car, it's a beauty, ride smooth. Vegas would be just the start. I kept my eyes on my phone, my face neutral, but inside, I was reeling. He was so wrapped up in his fantasies, he didn't even notice my silence wasn't agreement but disgust. When he finally paused, expecting some enthusiastic response, I just shook my head slowly. Tom, you're in for a surprise when we get home, I said quietly, my tone flat. He misread my calm for defeat. That's my girl. Knew you'd come around. It's the smart play, Joe. When the train pulled into our station, Tom was buzzing with excitement, probably imagining himself behind the wheel of a new car. I felt nothing but a resolve so sharp it almost scared me. This was the end of the line, not just for our trip, but for us. As we walked through the doors of our home, Tom was already on his phone, likely bragging about his victory to someone. I let him prattle on as I went to the bedroom, my decision clear in my mind. That evening, after Tom had finally run out of steam and fallen asleep, sprawled on the sofa with dreams of dollar signs dancing in his head, I sat down at the kitchen table with all the paperwork from my mother's will. I drafted an email to a lawyer, detailing everything. I needed advice, yes, but more than that, I needed an ally. Tom's sister, Linda, had always been kind to me, understanding even when Tom was at his worst. It was time to reach out, to tell her everything, and to ask for her help. The next morning was heavy with the weight of impending confrontations. Tom came down for breakfast, unaware of the surprise I had prepared for him. As he entered the kitchen, he froze. His sister Linda was sitting at the dining table, her expression stern and unwavering. From the look on Tom's face, seeing her was the last thing he expected. Linda? What are you doing here? Tom stammered, his usual bravado nowhere in sight. Linda didn't waste a moment. Sit down, Tom. We need to talk, she said, her voice firm, leaving no room for argument. Tom glanced at me before reluctantly sitting down opposite his sister. I remained standing, feeling strangely empowered, with Linda on my side. Linda turned to me, nodding slightly as if to say, "Go ahead." I took a deep breath. Tom, I told Linda everything, about your spending, your demands to sell my mother's house, and your threats of divorce. Tom's face went pale, his eyes darting between Linda and me. Joanne, Linda cut him off, her tone icy. You what, Tom? You've embarrassed yourself enough. I've been listening to Joanne, and frankly, I'm disgusted. She turned her full attention to Tom, who seemed to shrink under her gaze. You haven't grown up at all. You're still acting like a spoiled child. And this house? Did you ever stop to think about what you've actually contributed to it? Nothing. This house belongs to me. I let you live here out of pity. Tom's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. He looked like he wanted to argue, but knew he stood no chance against the truth. And there's more. Linda continued, her voice hard as steel. The alimony for Sophie? I've been the one sending it, Tom. Not you. You couldn't even manage that, could you? I felt a shockwave go through me. All these years, I thought Tom had at least done his duty by Sophie. I was wrong. Tom looked down, unable to meet either of our eyes. Linda shook her head. You're not just a failure as a husband and a father. You failed as a man. I felt tears well up, not from sadness, but from the raw, harsh truth Linda was laying bare. I stepped forward, my voice shaking but clear. Tom, I want the house to go to Sophie. She deserves it, and it's what my mother wanted. At that, Tom shot up from his seat, fury replacing his earlier defeat. I don't care about Sophie. I want my share. If I don't get it, I want a divorce. After these words, something snapped in me. I reached into my bag and pulled out the divorce papers I had prepared, my hand steady now. Here, Tom. You want a divorce? You got it. Sign these. Tom's face went from red to white, his rage deflating like a punctured balloon. You can't do this to me, Joanne. I'll ask for alimony. I couldn't help but laugh, a short, bitter sound. Go ahead. Try. You might find our daughter a tougher opponent in court than me. His hand trembled as he took the pen and signed the papers, each stroke heavy with the weight of his failures. Without another word, he grabbed his coat and left, the door slamming shut behind him. After the dust settled from the divorce, I moved back to the city where I grew up and settled into my mother's house. Now, the house buzzed with the excitement of new beginnings. My daughter, Sophie, after graduating college, had gotten married and was now expecting her first child. She and her husband, Matt, decided to move in with me. One quiet afternoon, as I tended the garden, my phone rang. I wiped my hands on my apron before answering. Seeing Tom's name flash on the screen gave me a moment's pause. Joanne, hey, I need a favor. Tom's voice sounded through the receiver, hesitant and a bit desperate. What kind of favor, Tom? I asked, my tone guarded but polite. It's about money. I've got myself into some trouble with debts, big ones. I was hoping you could help me out, he confessed, his voice strained. I couldn't help but let out a small, incredulous laugh. Tom, I think you've got the wrong idea. I'm not in a position to help you with that. There was a silence, then he chuckled dryly. Well, I had to ask, right? Anyway, how about we give it another shot? Marry me again, Joanne. We could start over. The suggestion was so absurd, I laughed outright. Marry you again? Tom, I'm not about to step on that same rake a third time. No, thank you. His sigh was audible over the phone. Guess I had that coming. All right then, take care, Joanne. Later that week, I was on the phone with Linda, Tom's sister. We kept in touch regularly, a friendship forged through shared trials with her brother. Joanne, you won't believe what Tom tried to pull this time. He attempted to sell my house to cover his debts. Can you imagine? If I hadn't found out just in time, he might have actually gone through with it. Linda's voice was a mix of anger and disbelief. I'm just glad you caught him before it was too late, I responded, genuinely relieved for her. Yeah, well, that's the last straw. I've cut him off completely now. No more rescues. He needs to learn, she declared, her tone resolute. We talked a bit more about lighter topics, before saying our goodbyes. Hanging up, I felt a profound sense of peace. Cutting Tom out of my life was the best decision I had ever made. The chaos he brought with him was gone, and in its place was a calm, stable life with my daughter and her growing family. Sophie waddled into the kitchen just as I was putting the kettle on. Who were you talking to, Mom? Linda, I replied, watching her settle herself at the table. She was just telling me about the latest drama with Tom. Sophie shook her head, a smile playing on her lips. I'm glad we're out of that mess. I can't wait for the baby to arrive, to start our own little chapter here. Me too, honey. This house, this family, it's going to be filled with so much love and none of the drama. I said, reaching out to pat her hand. Hi, I'm Tessa. I've always been the kind to keep my head down and work hard. It's paid off. I landed a job at a major trading company right out of college and clawed my way up from there. Life was straightforward: work, sleep, and the occasional night out with friends to blow off steam. That routine changed the night I met Lucas. It was at one of those rare outings with friends, a loud party downtown where the music pounds in your chest and you have to shout to be heard. Lucas was different, more reserved, hanging back from the crowd, nursing a beer. He had that look, you know? Like he had a story to tell, but preferred to keep it to himself. We got to talking, or rather, shouting over the noise. Turns out, we both shared a distaste for these kinds of loud parties, which was kind of funny, considering where we were. Lucas was easy to talk to. He had this straightforward way about him that I appreciated right off the bat. Not really my scene, to be honest. He yelled over the music, a small smile playing on his lips. Then why are you here? I asked, genuinely curious. Trying to keep my cousin happy. She dragged me out tonight, he admitted, rolling his eyes slightly. Sounds like a good brother, I replied, nodding in approval. We ditched the party early, opting for a quieter bar down the street where we could actually hear each other. That night we talked about everything, from our jobs to our taste in movies. Lucas mentioned his previous marriage almost in passing. It didn't work out. She wasn't faithful, he said simply, his voice flat. But that's the past. His honesty caught me off guard, but it also made me respect him more. We started seeing each other regularly after that night. Things moved fast, and it wasn't long before we were talking about a future together. After Lucas and I decided to make things official, he was eager to introduce me to his mother, Susan. We planned a Sunday brunch at her place, and I remember feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. I wanted to make a good impression. As we pulled up to her tidy, two-story house, Lucas turned to me with a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, it'll be fine. Just be yourself," he said, squeezing my hand. The moment we stepped inside, I was hit with the smell of bacon and eggs. The house was spotless, every item in its rightful place, which told me she probably spent the better part of the morning cleaning and preparing for this. "Lucas, my boy." Susan's voice rang out from the kitchen, followed by her appearance in the doorway. She wiped her hands on her apron as she approached us. Her gaze landed on me, and it felt like she was trying to x-ray my soul. "And you must be Tessa. Heard a lot about you." "Nice to finally meet you, Mrs. Thompson," I said, extending my hand. She shook it, her grip surprisingly firm. "Call me Susan." Mrs. Thompson was my mother-in-law, and I couldn't stand her. Her blunt statement threw me off, but I laughed it off. "All right, Susan it is." We sat down at the dining table, which was meticulously set with fine china and crystal glasses, an indication of how important this meeting was to her. Susan served us, then took the seat across from me, her eyes never straying far. "So, Tessa," she started, cutting straight to the chase. "Lucas tells me you're quite the career woman." "Trading, is it? Sounds like a man's world." I wasn't sure if it was a compliment or a jab. "Yes, it's trading, and it's for anyone who's good at it," I replied, keeping my tone light. Lucas chimed in, perhaps sensing the tension. "Tessa's one of the top traders at her firm. She's really good at what she does." "That so?" Susan's voice carried a note of skepticism. "I hope you know, Lucas needs someone who's present, not stuck at the office all hours." I felt my cheeks warm up, but I kept my cool. I manage my time well. Lucas and I have plenty of quality time together. Susan hummed, poking at her food. "We'll see." I remember Lucas's ex was always busy too, until she was busy with someone else. Lucas's fork clattered against his plate. "Mom, that's enough." "Oh, relax. I'm just making conversation," Susan said, waving a dismissive hand. She then turned her attention back to me. "Tell me, Tessa, do you cook? Or should my son expect takeout every night?" I love to cook, I said, forcing a smile. Lucas can vouch for my lasagna. Lucas nodded vigorously. It's true. She makes a mean lasagna. Well, isn't that something? Susan's tone softened a fraction. Maybe you'll have to make it for me one of these days. The rest of the meal passed with small talk about the weather and Susan's garden, which she seemed more passionate about. Every now and then, she'd throw in a pointed question or comment, testing my responses. It was like a verbal sparring match, and I was determined not to let my guard down. As we were leaving, Susan pulled me aside. Her voice was low, almost a whisper, but her words cut through the air. Listen, Tessa. My son's happiness is everything to me. I'll do whatever it takes to protect him. Remember that. I met her gaze, my voice steady. I have no intention of hurting Lucas. You have nothing to worry about. Susan studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. We'll see, won't we? After the brunch with Susan, I thought maybe things would settle down, but I was way off. Lucas's work required him to travel a lot, which meant I was home alone often. Susan saw this as her chance to really crank up her watch over me. It started with unexpected visits. The first time it happened, I was working from my home office when I heard the doorbell. I opened the door to find Susan standing there, her face set in a stern expression that didn't promise anything good. Tessa, just in the neighborhood, she said, brushing past me into the house as if it was her own. Thought I'd drop by. I masked my annoyance with a tight smile. Nice to see you, Susan. What brings you here? Oh, just making sure everything's alright here while my son's away, she said, already wandering into the living room, eyeing everything critically. Her visits became more frequent, and each time, Susan had something to say about how I kept the house. It was like living under a microscope. One day, she walked into the kitchen while I was prepping dinner and started rifling through my pantry. Just seeing what you feed my son when he's home. You know processed foods are no good, right? She commented, holding up a box of pasta like it was evidence in a trial. But it didn't stop at home visits. I started noticing Susan around places I frequented, the grocery store, the gym, even the cafe near my work. It was getting creepy. One afternoon, I confronted her. She was, coincidentally, at the same grocery store as me, pushing her cart down the aisle I was in. Susan, this is the third time this week I've run into you like this. What's going on? She played innocent, a sly smile tugging at her lips. What, can't a woman do her shopping? Not at the exact same places and exact same times as her daughter-in-law, consistently. What are you trying to do, Susan? Her smile faded, and she leaned closer, her voice low and harsh. I'm keeping my eyes open, Tessa. You can play the perfect wife all you want, but I know about your desire to cheat on my son. Every encounter left me more frustrated and angry. It wasn't just the invasion of my privacy, it was the constant tension, the expectation of having to defend myself against imaginary accusations. Over time, Susan's eyesight had gotten worse, something about her age and her health stacking the odds against her. The doctor had given her glasses, but she hated them. Said they made her feel old and irritated her nose. She'd put them on and take them off, fussing and fuming, and more often than not, she'd just leave them somewhere and forget. Because of that, she saw very poorly, which only added fuel to her naturally suspicious nature. With Lucas away on another one of his frequent business trips, I had grown accustomed to handling things on my own, including dealing with Susan's relentless scrutiny. One evening, feeling a bit cooped up and in need of a change of scenery, I made plans to meet my brother, Jake, for dinner. It was a casual meet-up, nothing fancy, just a chance to catch up with family and unwind. I chose a little outdoor restaurant with a nice terrace that wasn't too far from where I worked. Jake arrived first, and I spotted him at a table, waving me over with a big grin. Hey, sis, he called out as I approached. His face was all bright and cheerful, the typical big brother ready to tease or share a joke. Hey, Jake. It's been too long, I said, giving him a quick hug before sitting down across from him. We ordered some food and drinks, and the conversation flowed easily, as it always did with Jake. We talked about work, family, and some of the latest movies we'd both seen. It was nice, relaxing, and exactly what I needed. As the evening wore on, we wrapped things up. Outside the restaurant, we stood up to say goodbye. I gave Jake a friendly hug, just a normal sister-brother moment. When I got home later that night, the house was dark and quiet. But as I turned on the light in the living room, I nearly jumped out of my skin. There was Susan, sitting on my couch, a smug look plastered across her face, and holding what looked like a digital camera. "What the hell, Susan? What are you doing in my house at this hour?" My voice was a mix of anger and shock. She rose from the couch, holding up the camera. "Gotcha," she said, her voice dripping with a venomous triumph. "Got what, exactly?" I snapped, my patience thinning rapidly. "This." She thrust the camera in my face, showing a photo of Jake and me hugging. "Caught you red-handed with your lover." I rolled my eyes, tossing my keys on the table. "I was with my brother, Jake. We had dinner. That's it." Susan snorted, a harsh, mocking sound that made my hands clench into fists at my sides. "Sure, your brother. I know what I saw." "Oh, really? And what did you see with those failing eyes of yours?" I snapped back, my patience at its breaking point. Her face flushed with anger, and she fumbled with the camera, finally shoving it in my direction. "See for yourself." I took the camera, half expecting some blurry photo taken from a distance, but there it was, a clear shot of Jake and me, mid-hug, smiling. Just a brother and sister enjoying a nice evening out. I couldn't help but laugh, which only seemed to infuriate her more. "What's so funny?" she demanded, her voice rising. "Here, look." I handed the camera back to her. "Put on your glasses, Susan. It's just me and Jake." For a moment, she hesitated, then, muttering under her breath, she dug in her purse and pulled out her glasses. Slipping them on, she looked at the photo again. I watched her face change as she finally saw what was really there. "Now, I think it's time you left," I said firmly, my own resolve hardening. Susan looked like she wanted to argue more, but then she just nodded stiffly and headed for the door. "This isn't over," she muttered as she left. The few weeks Lucas was home felt like a dream. We were inseparable, catching up on lost time, and for a brief period, I could almost forget about the constant cloud of tension that was his mother, Susan. But like all good things, it came to an end too quickly. Soon enough, Lucas was packing his bags again for another extended business trip. I braced myself for the usual loneliness that accompanied his departures, but this time a new complication arose. Susan decided to move in. She showed up at our doorstep one afternoon, suitcase in tow, announcing her stay as if it were the most natural decision in the world. "It's for the good of the family, Tessa. I'm here to make sure you don't get into any trouble," she declared, pushing past me into the living room. I called Lucas immediately, my voice shaking with frustration. "She can't just move in here, Lucas. You need to talk to her." Lucas sighed on the other end of the line. "Tessa, please, just try to get along. I don't want to fight with her about this. It's only for a few weeks." Reluctantly, I agreed, but hanging up the phone, I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach. This wasn't going to be easy. Susan wasted no time taking over the household. That first weekend, she followed me around, critiquing every little thing I did. "You're folding those towels all wrong," she'd say, or, "You missed a spot there, do it again." She even took over the kitchen, her worst idea yet. Due to her deteriorating eyesight, she constantly oversalted or overpeppered everything, but whenever the food turned out barely edible, she blamed me. "You must have distracted me," she'd snap, or, "You're trying to sabotage my cooking." During the weekdays, her behavior grew even more suffocating. She sat in the living room, a notebook in her lap, jotting down the times I left for work and came home. Anytime I was delayed, even by traffic, she'd greet me with a sneer. "Late again, Busy day or busy boyfriend?" "It was traffic, Susan." Like it is for millions of people every day, I'd retort, my patience fraying at the edges. Her insinuations were relentless, and each day ended with me locking myself in the bedroom, fuming but helpless. Lucas's request echoed in my mind, keeping me from unleashing the torrent of anger I felt. A month into Susan's invasive stay at our house, I finally got the news I'd been waiting for, a promotion at work. This wasn't just any promotion. It came with the opportunity for training at our company's main branch in another city. I'd been eyeing this chance for years, a real step up in my career. When I told Lucas over the phone, his excitement for me was palpable, even through the distance. "That's incredible, babe. I'm so proud of you," he enthused. "Don't worry about the time apart. It'll fly by, and we'll be back together before you know it." Despite the distance and the issues with his mother, his support was unwavering. It bolstered my spirits, filled me with warmth and determination. But then there was Susan. I broke the news to her one evening, trying to keep the conversation light and straightforward. "Susan, I've been promoted. I'll need to go to another city for a while to train," I explained, hoping to sound as nonchalant as possible. Her reaction was as expected, sour and accusatory. "So, you're running off to another city now? What's really there, Tessa? A lover?" she spat, her words dripping with venom. I sighed, frustration bubbling inside. "It's for training, Susan. There's no lover." "Why is that so hard for you to believe?" She snorted, her expression twisted in disbelief. "Sure, training. Just convenient timing, isn't it? As soon as Lucas is gone, you find a reason to leave too." I shook my head, unable to hide my irritation. "Believe what you want, Susan. I'm going, and that's final." With Lucas's blessing ringing in my ears, I packed my bags that night, eager to escape the oppressive atmosphere of my own home. Susan's persistent mistrust and conspiracy theories had drained me, and the idea of a few weeks away felt like a breath of fresh air. Once I settled into my temporary apartment in the new city, the sense of freedom was palpable. No Susan lurking around every corner, no insinuations or bitter comments at every turn. I was doing well in training, making new connections, and actually enjoying my evenings in peace. I found myself thinking, more than once, how pleasant life was without Susan watching my every move. But then, one ordinary afternoon as I returned from a session, my phone pinged with a new voice message from Susan. The content of that message turned my newfound peace upside down. "Tessa, I hope you're enjoying your time with your lovers, because you won't have a home to come back to. I've taken care of everything. The house is sold. Stay where you are, for all I care." Her voice, cold and triumphant, sent chills down my spine. I replayed the message, my mind racing. It couldn't be true. Lucas hadn't mentioned anything, and he owned the house, nothing could be done without his signature. Yet, the malicious glee in Susan's voice couldn't be ignored. What had she done? I called Lucas immediately, panic edging my voice, but the call went straight to voicemail. With him still on his business trip and likely in meetings or on a flight, I felt helpless, stuck in another city, the seeds of doubt Susan had planted now sprouting relentless anxiety. As the days passed with no return call from Lucas, my mind conjured up all sorts of disastrous scenarios. Had Susan forged his signature? Was it even legally possible to sell the house like that? The questions tormented me, gnawing at my focus and sleep. Despite the turmoil, I forced myself to continue with the training. I had worked too hard to let Susan's potentially empty threats derail my progress here. By the end of the training program, I was mentally exhausted, not just from the courses, but from the emotional roller coaster Susan had sent me on. I walked into the house, my mind still reeling from the chaos of the past few weeks. There, in the middle of the living room, stood Susan, squinting at me as if she couldn't quite make out who I was. She wasn't wearing her glasses again, which explained the unsure look on her face. But as I got closer, her expression shifted to one of smug triumph. "Welcome back, Tessa," she said, her voice dripping with a venomous cheerfulness. "I have some news for you." I dropped my bag by the door, bracing myself. What now, Susan? She thrust a stack of papers at me. Here, read this. It's all settled. The house has been sold. You don't belong here anymore, or in this family for that matter. Her words were cold, calculated. Her claim was so outrageous that for a moment, I was too shocked to speak. What are you talking about? Lucas would never agree to sell our house without discussing it with me first. Oh, but he did. And he's tired, Tessa. Tired of your endless affairs, she added, a harsh edge to her voice. I snatched the papers from her hands, my heart pounding as I flipped through them. My eyes scanned the document quickly at first, then more carefully as something caught my attention. A laugh escaped my lips, not from amusement but from sheer disbelief. Susan looked at me, puzzled and clearly irritated. What's so funny? Here, I said, pushing the papers back into her hands. Put on your glasses and read it aloud. Read what you've signed. Reluctantly, she fumbled for her glasses, put them on, and started reading. This agreement, made and entered into this day by and between. Her voice faltered as she continued, the realization dawning slowly. This isn't a sale contract. It's a loan agreement for consulting services? Yes, Susan. That's right. You didn't sell the house. You signed up for a high-interest loan from some scam artists who took advantage of you. Susan's face went pale, her hands trembling as she held the document. But I thought I was selling the house. There was an ad in the paper, and the man was so convincing. He said it could all be done without bothering Lucas with the details, that it was better this way. You thought you'd sell my house out from under me? Without even a real check on what you were signing? I was incredulous, anger and disbelief warring within me. Tears started streaming down her face, her earlier composure crumbling. I just wanted to protect my son from you and your infidelities. I didn't mean for this to happen. I forgot my glasses, and everything seemed so legitimate. I stared at her, the weight of everything she'd put me through bearing down on me. Susan, you have gone too far this time. You need to leave. Now. With a heavy heart but a clear resolve, I watched as Susan packed a few belongings into her bag, still sobbing, still muttering apologies. As she walked out the door, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. When Lucas returned from his business trip, I had a lot to tell him. As soon as he put down his bags, I started to unload everything that had happened, from Susan's attempted deception to the fake documents. He listened, his face growing tighter and more serious with every detail I shared. After I finished, he was quiet for a long moment, just staring at the ground. Then, he looked up, his jaw set. This is unbelievable. It's time we taught Mom a serious lesson. What she planned to do was way out of line, he said, his voice firm and angry. However, the next day, after a tearful confrontation with Susan, where she pleaded ignorance and desperation, Lucas decided we needed legal advice. We consulted a lawyer to understand the full implications of what Susan had done. The lawyer was pretty clear. From a legal standpoint, your mother-in-law voluntarily took out that loan and signed the contract. She's liable for the repayment, he explained in a no-nonsense tone. Susan's face when she heard that news was something I could never forget. She had thought she could manipulate her way out of the situation, but reality hit hard. She was on the hook for a significant amount of money, and there was no easy way out. She had to find a job, and fast. Within weeks, she started working 2 shifts, just to make ends meet. With Susan now occupied and no longer having time to meddle in our lives, Lucas and I finally found some peace. We decided it was a good time to take a break, to give ourselves a chance to heal and bond again after the chaos. We went to Hawaii for a second honeymoon, and it was blissful. We talked a lot about our future during those long, leisurely walks along the beach. I think we're ready to think about having a baby, don't you? Lucas said one evening, the sunset casting warm glows on his face. I smiled, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. Yes, I do. Let's enjoy being us for a bit longer, and then let's go for it. Sounds perfect, he replied, kissing me gently. Now, back from Hawaii, life feels lighter, simpler. We spend our weekends planning the garden, redecorating the house, just enjoying each other's company. Lucas supports me in everything, including my career and our future family plans. We've discussed timelines, how we're going to manage our work-life balance, and how excited we are to be parents. It's a new chapter for us, one that's filled with hope and looking forward. So, there I was, standing outside the quaint little coffee shop where Clara had decided to play Cupid. Clara's been my go-to gal since high school, always into stars and numbers and all that jazz. Me? I've always kept my feet on the ground. But here I was, ready to meet Mr. Perfect Match according to her numerology charts. I spotted Clara waving frantically from inside. Pushing through the door, the bell jingled loudly, drawing a few glances. "There you are, Elle. I was starting to think you'd chickened out," Clara teased as I made my way over. "Chickened out? Me? Never," I scoffed, rolling my eyes but smiling. "But remind me again why I let you talk me into these things." Clara's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Because deep down, you know I'm right. Plus, you've gotta admit, your dating pool has been more like a dating puddle lately." "Harsh, Clara. Really harsh," I said, but I couldn't help laughing. That was Clara for you, no filter, but usually right. Just then, a guy walked in, tall, dark hair, easy smile. The kind of smile that reached his eyes and made you want to smile back, even if you were trying to stay cool. "Ah, that's him," Clara whispered, giving me a nudge. "Mark, over here." Mark turned our way and walked over. He had a confident stride but not too cocky, which was good. We shook hands, and his grip was just right, not too firm, not too weak. "Nice to meet you, Elsie. Clara's told me a lot about you," he said, his voice warm. We ordered our coffees, and I went for my usual, black, no sugar. Mark went for the same, and Clara teased, "Look at you two, already a perfect match." As we settled into our seats, the initial awkwardness melted away surprisingly quickly. Mark was easy to talk to. He didn't just talk about himself either, he asked about my work as a video editor, genuinely interested in the details. "So, you edit videos? That sounds cool. Bet you've seen all sorts of crazy footage," Mark said, leaning forward, elbows on the table. "You have no idea," I laughed. "From wedding bloopers to failed YouTube stunts, I've seen it all." "What about you?" Clara mentioned something about engineering. "Yeah, I work with a small firm downtown. We handle all sorts of projects, from bridges to buildings. Keeps me on my toes," he explained. The conversation flowed from work to movies to our shared guilty pleasure of bad reality TV. It felt like talking to an old friend rather than a guy I just met. As the evening wound down, Mark said, "I had a great time tonight, Elsie. Maybe we can do this again? Just the two of us?" I hesitated for a split second, old habits die hard, but nodded. "I'd like that." We exchanged numbers, and as I walked home later, I couldn't help but think maybe Clara's numerology wasn't all nonsense. Mark really did seem like a great guy. But only time would tell. For now, I'd just enjoy the flutter in my stomach that I hadn't felt in a long time. When I moved in with Mark, everything felt like it was falling into place. He had this old house, a bit of a fixer-upper, but it had charm. We started talking about making it our forever home, and that's when the whole money talk came up. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon, and we were lounging on the couch with cups of coffee, going over some bills and future plans. "Elle, you know how I've got that mortgage hanging over me, right?" Mark started, a bit hesitant. "I've been thinking, maybe we could use some of your savings to pay it off. It would be a load off, and we could start fresh, you know?" I took a sip of my coffee, buying some time. My savings weren't just rainy day money, it was the inheritance from my grandma, meant to be something special, something she saved for me. "Mark, that's a lot of cash. We talking about all of it?" I asked, trying to keep the surprise out of my voice. "Not all, no. Just the mortgage part. We'd still have plenty left for the house and maybe some extras, he said quickly, like he'd rehearsed it. I set my coffee down and turned to face him. Look, I get where you're coming from, but that's big money. And it was meant for my future, you know? Mark nodded, reaching for my hand. I know, Elle, and this is our future, right? Together? Paying off that mortgage would mean less stress about finances. We could even start talking about renovations or a new car. I pulled back a little, thinking it over. It wasn't just money, it was security, my security, and Grandma's wish. But then, wasn't a happy, stress-free home with Mark worth it? Okay, suppose we do this, clear your mortgage. What's next? We're just going to jump into renovations? I asked, feeling the weight of the decision. Yeah, think about it. We could redo the kitchen, maybe knock out that wall to open up the living room. Make it really ours, he said, his eyes lighting up with every word. And furniture? We gonna spruce up that too? I was warming up to the idea, picturing the house transforming with us. Absolutely. New couch, dining set, maybe even that patio set you were eyeing last week, Mark replied, squeezing my hand. So, we did it. Paid off his mortgage and started planning the renovations. The next few months were a whirlwind of contractors and paint samples. The house was turning into what we'd imagined, and it felt good, mostly. There were moments, late at night, when I'd wonder if I'd put too much into this, too soon. But then I'd see Mark, all excited about picking out fixtures or tiles, and I'd tell myself it was right. The phone call that shook our newly renovated home came late one evening. Mark's phone lit up, buzzing insistently on the kitchen counter. The look on his face when he picked up told me it wasn't good news. Mom? Slow down, what's happened? Mark paced the length of our kitchen. I could only catch bits and pieces, but enough to piece together the emergency. His dad had a stroke. Okay, we're coming. Just hang tight. Mark ended the call and turned to me, his face pale. It's Dad, he's had a stroke. We need to go, Elle. Packing a bag in a whirl, we drove through the night to his parents' place in the next city over. We arrived to find Mark's mom, Linda, a small, wiry woman with more nerves than calm. She was fretting in the doorway as we pulled up. Mark, thank God you're here, she said, pulling him into a tight hug. Then her eyes landed on me. Elsie, you too. Inside, the house was dim, the air thick with tension. Linda led us straight to where Mark's dad, Joe, lay in bed, his left side immobile, his face drawn. Dad, it's me, Mark. We're here now, Mark said, trying to keep his voice steady. Joe's right hand twitched, his eyes showing a flicker of recognition. Linda hovered by the bed, wringing her hands. He can't speak. The doctors, they don't know if he'll recover fully. What are we looking at here, Linda? Does he need rehab? A nurse? I asked, feeling out of my depth but needing to know the plan. Linda shook her head, a stubborn set to her mouth. No, he stays here. He wouldn't want to be anywhere else. But Linda, think about professional care. He needs specialists. I pushed gently, knowing she was scared but also aware of what was at stake. No, Elsie. We can't afford that, and this is his home. He stays, Linda snapped, her tone final. At a family dinner that night, the air was tense as Mark and Linda laid out their expectations. Mark took a deep breath. Elle, I have to head back for work, but Mom needs help here with Dad. You've seen how hard it is for her. Linda nodded, her gaze fixed on me. Yes, Elsie, please. I can't manage on my own with my sciatica acting up. It means so much to us. I felt the weight of their gaze, the desperation in Linda's voice. Mark was looking at me too, his eyes pleading. I knew what my answer would be before I even said it out loud. After Mark left, the reality set in. It was just me and Linda, and mostly just me, taking care of Joe. Linda's bouts of sciatica left her bedridden many days, and I was running the house, managing medications, and trying to keep up with my own work remotely. The days were turning into a blur of endless tasks and mounting frustrations. Linda, blaming everything on her own health issues, didn't lift a finger around the house. Worse, she had a knack for making me feel like nothing I did was ever enough. "Elsie, are you going to sit at that computer all day?" Linda's voice would slice through the quiet of the house like a knife. I was hunched over my laptop, trying to meet a video editing deadline, the stress evident in my tightly furrowed brow. "I'm working, Linda. This is my job," I'd respond, my voice strained but calm, keeping my eyes fixed on the screen. "It doesn't look like much work to me," she'd scoff, shuffling off with an air of disapproval. I bit back the sharper retorts teetering on the tip of my tongue. After all, she was family, and family meant biting your tongue until it bled, right? But it was hard, especially when I felt more like a maid than a daughter-in-law. Each day, I cooked, cleaned, and cared for Joe, my father-in-law, who still hadn't regained his ability to speak. His eyes, full of gratitude and apology, often met mine, offering silent thanks that Linda never voiced. During one of my increasingly rare calls with Mark, I tried to explain how strained things had become. "Mark, it's tough here. Your mom, she's really hard on me. And your dad needs more care than I can manage on top of everything else," I confided, the weight of my exhaustion evident in my voice. "I know it's hard, Elle. Just hang in there a bit longer, okay? Dad will get better, and once he's up on his feet, you can come back home," Mark pleaded. Determined to do more for Joe, I completed a course in massage therapy tailored for stroke recovery. Each evening, after the dinner dishes were cleared and Linda had retired to her room with a grunt, I'd help Joe into a comfortable chair and gently work his stiff muscles. Things took a surprising turn when Linda announced she was feeling better and wanted to visit Mark. "I think I'll go stay with your husband for a few months, see the city," she declared one morning out of the blue. Her news should have filled me with dread at the thought of being alone, but instead, a wave of relief washed over me. When she left, the house felt lighter, as if her departure had lifted a heavy veil that had been smothering me. Finally alone, I established a new routine. Mornings were for Joe. We developed a silent camaraderie, communicating through gestures and shared smiles. I'd massage his limbs, encouraging movement, and his improvement, however slight, felt like victories in a war I'd thought we were losing. Afternoons and evenings were mine again. I reclaimed my time and dove back into my video editing with renewed vigor. Without Linda's constant nagging, I found my productivity soaring. I'd work late into the night, the glow of my laptop a beacon of normalcy in the otherwise turned upside-down world. Evenings were the hardest. I'd sit in the quiet after dinner, missing Mark, missing my old life, but also appreciating the peace. "I think we're doing okay, Joe," I'd say as we settled in after our dinner, speaking more to fill the silence than out of necessity. Joe would nod, his eyes crinkling in agreement or perhaps gratitude. Half a year had rolled around, and it was amazing to see how much Joe had improved. He was not only talking, but had also started getting around with a new wheelchair I helped pick out for him. It was a game changer. He even began doing things for himself, like making his own snacks and managing his medication, which seriously lightened my load. During this time, Joe and I had grown incredibly close, so much that he started calling me his daughter, which warmed my heart every time he said it. It wasn't just about care anymore, it was about family, about the bond we had formed. One lazy afternoon, we were both in the living room, Joe in his wheelchair, flipping through channels, and me with my laptop, trying to catch up on emails. A thought had been nagging at me for a while, and seeing him so active and independent brought it to the forefront. "Joe, can I ask you something?" I began, hesitating a bit as I closed my laptop. "Of course, kiddo. What's on your mind?" Joe looked over, his face open and inviting. "Well, I was wondering, why didn't you ever consider going to a nursing home or maybe even short-term care at the hospital? It might have made your recovery easier," I said, genuinely curious. Joe looked genuinely surprised. "A nursing home?" I thought about it. Actually, I wouldn't have minded that at all. I'd even got some money saved up just in case I needed to go to a better place than what the basic insurance covers. I frowned, confused. Really? Linda told me you were completely against it, that you wanted to stay here no matter what. She said there was no extra money for anything else. Joe's face hardened slightly. That's not true, Elsie. I never said I wanted to stay here no matter what. And the money, it's there. I guess she didn't want me using it on a nursing home. That conversation left a sour taste in my mouth. It seemed there were decisions being made without Joe's input, which didn't sit right with me. But before I could dig deeper, my work pulled me back in. I'd landed a major video editing project that demanded almost all my attention. It was a big break for me, a chance to really make a name for myself in the industry. Life settled into a comfortable routine. Joe was doing well, my career was on an upswing, but there was a void where Mark used to be. His visits had become non-existent, and his calls were brief and distracted. Busy at work was always his excuse. As Joe's health stopped causing concern, I thought it was time to mend things at home too. With a heart full of hopeful anticipation, I packed up some of my things, hugged Joe goodbye, and headed back to the house that Mark and I had turned into a home. It was late evening when I arrived, the neighborhood cloaked in darkness, the familiar glow of our porch light a beacon in the night. But something was off. As I approached the front door, my key wouldn't fit into the lock. Confused and slightly anxious, I rang the doorbell. After a few tense moments, the door swung open, revealing a woman I'd never seen before. "Can I help you?" she asked, eyeing me suspiciously. I live here with my husband. Who are you?" My voice trembled, a mix of confusion and growing dread setting in. "I'm just watching the house for the new owner," she responded, her tone cautious yet firm. "New owner? There must be some mistake. This is my house," I said, the firmness in my voice belying the shock that was starting to take hold. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but the house has been sold. Maybe you should call your husband or something," she suggested before she started to close the door. Panic rising, I stepped back, pulling out my phone to call Mark. My hand shook so badly, I nearly dropped it twice. When he finally answered, his voice was cold, detached. "Mark, what's going on? Why is there someone else in our house?" I demanded, my voice cracking under the strain. "Elsie, I sold the house. We needed to move on. I bought a new place with my mom. There's no room for you there," he said, his words like ice shards piercing through me. "But all the money I put into that house, our house. How could you sell it without even telling me?" I could barely keep the desperation out of my voice. Mark laughed, a sound so chilling it echoed in my ears. "You think you can prove any of that? Good luck, Elsie. Are you divorcing me?" My voice was a whisper, barely audible even to my own ears. "The papers are on their way to Dad's. You can sign them and send them back," Mark said flatly. "Mark, please, what about your dad? What about Joe?" I pressed, desperate for some semblance of sanity in this madness. "He's no longer my concern. Mom's got the will in her favor now. We don't need you, or him. Why don't you take care of him if you're so concerned?" His tone was dismissive, as if discarding not just his father but our entire life together. The line went dead, the finality of the tone signaling the end of everything we had built. I stood there in the dark, alone, the cold night air wrapping around me like a shroud. The woman in the house turned off the porch light, and suddenly the beacon that had always signified home was gone, leaving me in darkness. I stumbled back to my car, my mind a whirlwind of betrayal, pain, and disbelief. The drive back to Joe's was a blur, my thoughts racing as I tried to piece together the shattered remnants of my life. How had everything gone so wrong so quickly? Steeling myself, I got out of the car and walked up to the front door. It opened before I could knock, Joe looking up from his wheelchair, his expression worried. "Oh, Joe, it's all gone. The house, Mark, he's left us with nothing." Joe took a deep breath and looked me straight in the eye. "Elsie, I've known about their scheming for a while now," he began, his voice grave but steady. "After my stroke, when I couldn't speak or move, I heard them. Linda and Mark, plotting right in front of me. I stared at him, aghast. What? You knew? My voice cracked under the strain of my emotions. Joe nodded slowly. Yes, I heard them planning to sell the house out from under you. And worse, they planned to dump me in some cheap care facility once they cashed in on my assets. I felt a cold fury building inside me, replacing the despair. How could they be so cruel? To you, to me? I struggled to wrap my head around the depth of their deceit. Joe's face hardened. They're only after the money, Elsie. That's all they've ever cared about. He paused, taking a moment before he reached into the pocket of his cardigan. Pulling out a set of keys, he placed them in my hand. But I've made moves of my own. I bought the house back, secretly. It's yours now, Elsie. I want you to have it. Tears welled up in my eyes again, but this time they were tears of relief mixed with a fierce determination. Joe, thank you. I don't know what to say. The very next day, we met with Joe's lawyer, a seasoned man with a no-nonsense attitude named Mr. Gibson. In his office, filled with legal books and papers, Joe made it clear he wanted to change his will. I want everything to go to Elsie. She's the daughter I should have had, Joe declared, his voice unwavering. Mr. Gibson nodded, taking notes. I'll prepare the new documents. Elsie, you're about to become the sole heir to Joe's estate. Grateful, I simply nodded, overwhelmed by Joe's trust in me. We then tackled the issue of the money I'd invested in Mark's house. Mr. Gibson was methodical. We'll need to prove your contributions to the mortgage. Bank statements, any receipts you might have, witness statements from the bank officials. Fortunately, I'd kept meticulous records. I have everything. We can prove every penny I put in, I assured him, pulling out a folder stuffed with documents. That's good. We'll file for the recovery of your funds. They can't just take what you've rightfully invested, Mr. Gibson said, starting to outline a plan of action. With each step we planned, I felt more empowered, ready to reclaim what was mine and protect Joe from any more harm. When the divorce papers arrived later that week, I signed them without a second thought. I was ready to close that chapter of my life. A week later, Mark and Linda showed up at my doorstep, the house they once called theirs, now indisputably mine. Their faces were the picture of desperation. I had already heard through my lawyer that they were panicking over the lawsuit I planned to file, demanding back the $150,000 I had put into the mortgage. Elsie, please, we need to talk, Mark began, his voice shaky, avoiding eye contact as if the guilt was too much to bear. Linda chimed in, wringing her hands nervously. We're so sorry, Elsie. It all got out of hand. Please, can't we just put this behind us? I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, not moved by their distress. Sorry? After everything you've done? You think a simple apology will fix it? But we're family, Linda tried again, her voice trembling. That ship sailed the moment you betrayed me and Joe, I replied sharply, the anger in my voice clear and unyielding. Seeing that their pleas were getting them nowhere, I decided to twist the knife a little deeper. And just so you know, Joe has changed his will. Everything goes to me now. The grin I wore was cruel, sweetened by the justice of it all. Linda's face went pale, and she fainted right there on my new porch. Mark, flustered and embarrassed, had to catch her before she hit the ground. The trial that followed was nothing short of a circus. Mark fought tooth and nail for every cent, refusing to admit that the money I invested was mine. Linda, ever the actress, put on quite a show in court, feigning illness to gain the judge's sympathy. But the evidence was undeniable. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. The defendant is ordered to repay $150,000 to the plaintiff. The evidence supports her claim unequivocally. Relief washed over me as justice was served. The gavel's final bang was like music to my ears. I walked out of that courtroom with my head held high, free from the chains Mark and Linda tried to place on me. Back at home, the house felt more like a sanctuary than ever. Joe and I celebrated quietly, a small toast to new beginnings and to justice. Life settled into a comfortable routine after that. I resumed my video editing work, finding joy in the craft that had always been my passion. Joe was more than just a father-in-law now, he was family, a true friend. News reached us through friends that Mark and Linda had to sell their flashy new apartment to cover the repayment. Now they were living in a rental, much humbler than before. It was a fitting turn of events, though I took no pleasure in their downfall. Just last week, Clara, my numerologist friend, called me up. "Elsie, I found the perfect guy for you. His birth date lines up beautifully with yours." I couldn't help but laugh, a light, free sound that felt good on my lips. "Thanks, Clara, but I think I'm going to stick to meeting people the old-fashioned way. Life's been too crazy for any more predictions." She laughed along with me, and we chatted for a few more minutes about life and love, the conversation light and easy,